Clemson.
This is 365 Sports.
Frazier adding more numbers, more yards to those. Oh, they don't have him yet. Look at Tommy Frazier. How many tackles can one man break? Touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Ward takes the snap. Play action. Drops. Looks. Pops out of the pocket. Runs to his left. Throws it downfield. It is caught by Dunn. He's got the first down to the 40. Down to the 50. Down the sideline to the 40. Down to the 30. He separates. He's to the 20. To the 10. To the 5. Touchdown. Florida State. Warwick done on third down. Unbelievable.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Burrow's got time, launching for the end zone, jump ball, touchdown, Terrence Marshall.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Touchdown for Russell, but only 14 of 29. He finds his number one target, number one, Corey Coleman, off to the races, touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Tuesday afternoon. All of us are in the studio today. Paul Catalina to my left, Craig Smoak to my right. I'm David Smoak. We appreciate your time. Andrew Valade running the mothership on this Tuesday afternoon. A lot of college basketball to get to. It just depends. If we get to the audio, Shiloh Sanders trying to get his father to admit that he worked hard to be fast and about the 40-yard dash or 40 meters, et cetera. We'll get to that. That's pretty cool from the Colorado football feed. We got a lot of basketball to get to, and we will. Our guests today include Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority. Arizona, of course, really good. Not as good as they hope to be, but still good. And then Craig Bohl, the AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association Executive Director. Clemson's scheduled today. Craig Smoak's off the radar. John McClain, Hall of Famer. And then also Paul Catalina's top five. And Kendall Cout looks at the Big 12 tournament, which, in fact, has just started. Paul had a weekend in Fort Worth in the middle of all the cows and cattle and all the other things in between.
Yeah. I stayed at the Drover, actually, which is a really, really cool hotel. And Fort Worth is really – I like to play a game in the stockyards. I like to play a game called Real Cowboy, Fake Cowboy, because it is a place where people can go and play dress-up like they're a cowboy. And I would say – the more expensive your clothes, the faker a cowboy you are.
Yeah, you got to have dirt on your
yeah, I mean, like, you'll occasionally see a dude who's down there to eat at Cattleman Steakhouse or the Lonesome Dove or something like that that's, got some dust on his chaps. But any kind of sparkles, to me, means you're a fake cowboy.
Well, Dover, good, beautiful place.
Oh, it's a great, wonderful.
All right, welcome back. And here we go. Cincinnati destroyed Oklahoma State earlier. Not a surprise. They're almost right there as a team trying to get in the NCAA tournament. They will need to have a huge week, but they did beat Oklahoma State by 19. They'll now play Iowa State tomorrow. Colorado, at least right now, early on against TCU, leading the Frogs. Now cut down from a 6-point lead to 1 in the last 40 seconds of that first half. Tonight, Arizona State, K-State, UCF will play Utah. And now, speaking of Arizona State, Michael Luke, who covers the state of Arizona, Jason Shear will join us momentarily. Michael also covers Arizona, saying this about Bobby Hurley, the Arizona State men's basketball coach. Hearing from people in Kansas City, the expectation is Bobby Hurley is coaching his last games at ASU. Seriously. He, of course, his brother Dan's won a couple of national titles. Bobby was a national championship player at Duke. But this could be it for Arizona State and Bobby Hurley if, in fact, no matter what they do, unless they find a way to get into the big tournament, they'll have to win all the way through into the weekend and even then, too.
I think that this is a two-pronged thing. One, they're in a very good basketball league, one of the best basketball leagues now. Their rival came into that league and didn't really miss a beat. Arizona's quite good. Arizona State a little stagnant. And once you start winning in football, you start going, oh, this is fun. We can win at other things too. And we'll talk about later about how Arizona State is going to start putting more money into their athletic department, which I have many opinions on. But I do think that Bobby Hurley, given the fact that they're just kind of stuck in the mud there at Arizona State, it also doesn't help that his brother has won 2 national championships in a row. And the
football team coming off.
The football team has this fantastic season, and everybody's excited in Tempe about athletics again, and then basketball kind of follows it up with a dud of a season. Not a great thing, and I guess it's a bummer for Bobby Hurley, but now is that time. A lot of coaching changes going on.
We need to double check on this because there's a conflicting report that came out 4 minutes ago from John Gambadoro, who says that Bobby Hurley is expected back next season. So I don't know what the pecking order of Arizona reporting is, but here's a guy on Arizona 98.7 there in Phoenix, and literally in the last 5 minutes, breaking news, Bobby Hurley expected to return. So we'll, I guess, ultimately figure out who was right on this, but one thing is for sure, there's definitely a crowd that is over the Bobby Hurley at Arizona State tenure and want to make a change. I've seen a lot of Arizona State fans who are in favor of moving forward with somebody new, and I think when you have a football team that did such great things and you have a little bit of momentum, you want to make sure you carry that over. We talked to Chris Level yesterday, and we were asking him about just some of his, thoughts on being around the new Big 12 over the last year and seeing different places and different teams. And he was mostly impressed with BYU, just the setup they have in general, all the fans and the kind of crowds they pull and things like that, atmosphere. But I think Arizona State's another one. He was joking about everybody on campus is pretty, but I think that's a program that rolls in and wins the Big 12 in football. Like, okay, what's missing from making you a more complete program in basketball? In the Big 12 especially is a big one. So you need to get that right. And so I don't know who's right in this reporting, but Arizona State basketball definitely needs a pick-me-up in one way or another. So we'll see if that's by a kick in the pants of the current coach or kicking him out and bringing somebody else new in. But it's anybody's guess as to who's right here on these conflicting reports.
Man, when he played at Duke, he was a fiery. He was a fantastic player for Mike Krzyzewski and also the Blue Devils. And his overall record is 20 games above 500 at Arizona State, including this year. Now, what they do tonight, if they stay alive or not, remains to be seen. Thanks for the update on that. Now, the Big 12 has played 20 games this year because of the increased number of teams in the conference. Here are some other conferences that played 20 games. ACC, the Big 10, the Big East, the Big West, Mountain West, Missouri Valley, Metro Atlantic, Ohio Valley, and the Southland Conference all had 20 conference games this year. And Kelly Robinet reporting that Brett Yormark says that the conference is going to go back to 18 games next year. Planning to go back to 18. That's something that's been reported, at least as that was being discussed. And you already are losing some games where you play people more than once because of 20 even with that. So you're going to have another couple of games that you miss out on where you don't play the 20. But a lot of conferences played 20. The SEC, 18. And so the Big 12 will go back to 18, which it was for a long, long time. And, of course, back when it was 10 teams, everybody played each other home and away.
Yeah, here's I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I liked that they played 20 games just because it means there's more Big 12 games. But also, you're taking away 2 games, which means you don't get, 2 return trips, essentially. Because if everybody plays everybody in the conference once, that's 15 games. And then you've got 5 games where you'd play somebody twice. As long as they make sure those 5 games are, protected rivalries or good matchups, I'm fine with that. I'm good with it. I get why the SEC's doing it. might as well, they'll throw in some good non-con games. I'm not worried about the Big 12 losing any steam when it comes to basketball prowess.
Shocking, the SEC's playing fewer conference games than anybody else around the country, or the most part, with 18. But the Big 12 appears to be going backwards.
I mean, it's one game. It's not like it's a huge advantage. But, I guess they technically play less. But, I don't know how much the difference there is. Brian Thornton, VP of basketball, said that they're going to 18 as opposed to 20. I guess part of this was that it's better for the non-conference, was one of the quotes from a guy who covers Cincinnati, Keegan Nickerson. Also said it's good to have a bye during the conference season. So better for non-conference, good to have a bye during the conference season. And then I don't know how in favor the coaches were of playing that many conference games, especially when those conference games are, when stacked together, a pretty tough little stretch there. So, I'm sure we'll hear more from your Mark in the coming weeks. Haven't really seen a consensus opinion on whether this is a good thing or not, but there is mention of others that play 20, and then there's the SEC who I guess plays 18. So I don't know. I don't have enough of a grip to understand if one or two less games in conference play is really that much of a difference. I couldn't tell you, but Scott Drew probably could. So next time he's on, we can ask him or somebody else that is in the fire. But I don't know how much of a change this really is.
I think if you asked most of the coaches and they didn't have to admit that, I don't have to go to Houston, to Kansas, to Arizona, or to Baylor, to Tech one more time during the year, the Octagon of Doom. I don't have to do that? Once more? Cool.
What Houston did at 19-1 is still staggering. They were good before they got to the Big 12, and then they've run it the last couple of years, no question. But they've been good under Kelvin Sampson for quite some time. By the way, it's Kellis Robinette. I have that in my phone as that. I said Robinette is Robinette. Thank you, Bracket Cat, for the correction. All right, March Madness is normally what people think of when it comes to the tournament that will start not this week, but early next week. There are play-in games and much more. But this story about Delaware, the Delaware basketball team, they were a number 12 seed in their own conference tournament. They had lost 11 of their last 12 to close out the regular season. And now they will play tonight for the conference championship. And then, of course, if they win, they will be in the NCAA tournament. And that, to me, these games or these type stories start March Madness, the buzzer beaters and much more. But Delaware, the Hens, with an unbelievable run after losing 11 of the last 12. There are some conferences where they're for example, Nebraska didn't even get in the Big Ten Conference tournament. Man, when you don't do that, you're bad. And especially with the money that they've put into with Fred Hoiberg, they are one win away tonight from possibly punching a ticket into the tournament as a super Cinderella.
Yeah, well, good luck to them. And this is the thing about expanding the tournament, that, you need to expand the tournament so that when Delaware goes on a run like this and potentially makes it after having a tragic run of a month and a half, then the team that won the conference all year long can still get in. But if they expand it and it just means that, the 13th best SEC or Big 12 team gets in, that's not doing anything for anybody.
Yeah, UNC Wilmington, who's been a good school, good play team, 26-7, 14-4 in the conference, are who they play tonight for the championship.
Well, those are the kind of stories that make March. So if they're able to go from 1-11 in their last 12 to going on a run in the conference tournament to make March, then that's what we all sign up to watch and cheer for, and hope for stories like that this time of year. So that'd be a cool one. I'm sure they'd get their fair share of bandwagoners if they're able to pull it off. But, that's impressive. I don't know much about them, but that's a cool little niche story that is definitely one of many that we'll have over these coming weeks to get to know these teams that aren't on national TV all the time a little bit more. So, that's a cool story. And the Blue Hens is one of the more unique mascots out there. I don't think I've really heard anything whatsoever about Delaware athletics since Joe Flacco.
There you go. Yep.
But that's about it in my history. I just no real Delaware crossover other than Joe Flacco. So, I hope they pull it off. That'd be pretty cool and, quite the story. But going back to the Big 12 for a second as well, one of the other comments I saw was basically less conference games. You're gaming your schedule to try to get more teams in. So basically doing what everybody else is. And so to answer my own question of I really don't know what the negligible difference would be in, slightly less games. And I guess that would be the main one would be, it's less off your plate in terms of the teams you're playing. Maybe that's one less trip to Kansas or to wherever. But, it's probably also like a lot of these leagues just trying to goose the system as much as they possibly can and lube it up so that they can squeeze as many teams into the field as they possibly can, which is, what everybody's doing. So, that would also be added onto that.
By the way, North Carolina, Wilmington beat Delaware by 30. The last time they met was just around the corner about maybe 2 weeks ago.
So Cinderella's probably not going to happen is what you're saying. But, hey, it's a cool
10.
story.
Yeah, but and you're right. They lost by 10, I think, the first time they met back quite some time ago. Joe Lunardi's Bracketology, we show that as we show the first day, of course, of the Big 12 and other tournaments about to start. At the bottom, multi-bid conferences. The SEC, 13, that's been the number. The Big 10, 10, that's been their number. The Big 8, or Big 12 with 8, that has been their number. Go to the second level, right above that, on the bubble. The last 4 byes: Utah State, Arkansas, Baylor, San Diego State. To the right of that, go down. That's the only team in the Big 12 that's kind of in that maybe on the bubble type moment. And Baylor, of course, will play tomorrow night against the winner of tonight's game between, Kansas State and Arizona State, in fact, is what it will be. But that's about as low as I've seen them, despite playing Houston very well, but losing again another home game on Saturday night. So they don't have too much room for error. What they cannot afford is a team, not so much the Delaware in that conference, but a team that is on the bubble losing, and a Cinderella or two get in, and then that could start to squeeze you and your opportunity to get back to the tournament.
Yeah, it's the nut cutting right now. Big 12. I mean, I don't think anything unless something shocking happens in the next couple of days. We've kind of known for a week what the Big 12 is going to be. The teams that were 7th, 8th, 9th kind of solidified themselves and moved now are 7th and 8th, and then we'll see if anything wild happens here in the tournament. TCU could use a couple wins, but I really don't think much is going to change. I especially think this is going to be more common in these massive leagues where outside of somebody who, like Delaware, comes in and runs it, the conference tournament, like John Calipari, I saw him saying the other day, is like, I've never really cared about it.
Delaware sure does, though.
Yeah, you played it, but I mean, it's like, you play hard. Like, what are the rewards to it? If you're already set, Kansas has usually done well in the Big 12 tournament, and I think part of that is just, they're in front of all their people. So it's hard not to play well when you've got essentially a home game. Missouri always did well when they were in the Big 12 and came to Kansas City. Bob Huggins took it ridiculously seriously. He really loved, getting that extra bump. But if your seed's not going to move, it's a really hard thing to go in and tell your team, like, hey, you guys have the internet and so do I. So go play hard here. Don't get hurt. It's tough on coaches, I think.
The seeds, again, with Baylor as one that is in the bubble, so they got to be careful. They can't just, flop and get beat by 15 or even lose. Probably still in because of who they've played in the conference they're in, but other than that, most likely not. Now, let's skip the Evan Miyakawa graphics, okay? Let's skip those. Let's go to Jamie Pollard. He is the director of athletics at Iowa State. We had him on just a couple of weeks ago. So this story was yesterday evening. His reaction to the graphic with all of that information in white, we'll get to what he said. Not going to get any easier to remain competitive when schools you compete with can do this. Not sure that's sustainable, but the reality is that $51.7 million more than we receive. In that story, Arizona State, the university, remember, they were a mess, an absolute mess. And when I saw Michael Crow's name, I was like, man, I haven't heard his name in a long time. But they got a $51.7 million subsidy that basically allows the athletic department to break even. And Jamie Pollard saying this is difficult for a place like Iowa State. The reactions to him were either find a way, get over it, stop whining, or we trust you to make sure you get us where we need to be going forward.
I saw sell beer as a comment a handful of times to that post.
You and I have a very good friend who's an Iowa State fan that would probably make up that $51 million in beer
Adam
alone.
Batchelor, yeah.
Would probably do it. No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's an example. Idea: don't complain about not having enough money, but turn down an extra $4 million a year in beer sales. Selling beer would be a great start. Beer, and there's a lot of others that are sympathetic. There's others that are also trying to explain it because, like a lot of things, people just post stuff on Twitter and they don't necessarily always understand it. So, I don't know that this Arizona story is completely like, oh, they just got a bunch of money. It's like they were also severely in debt. They had to have money. Do y'all remember talking about Arizona last year?
That's what I mentioned at the start.
Yeah, so it's like that's also a part of this story as well. It's not just like, hey, here's a bunch of money to go be good at football. It's like, no, they were massively in debt. They needed help, and so I do understand where he's coming from, though, and that not every school is going to be able to do things the same way. And I don't know. I understand the putting it out there. I don't know what he's looking to gain other than maybe just spur Iowa State fans a little bit more. But, I mean, it is what it is, guys. Like, I don't know. I don't really have a lot of tolerance for, this isn't fair. We don't have this. And it's like, well, that's just what it is now. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to have to sell beer or figure something else out,
I mean, is the university going to do this every single year?
Well, they hadn't been doing that. They had a $7.6 million deposit in 22, $9.3 in 2023. And so, no, this makes them whole. It makes them flat even. I don't know if that means that they'll do that in Tempe tomorrow or next year.
It makes them whole. So are they going to do this again? If they're going to give themselves $50 million a year,
that's something,
then that's something.
Right,
but if it's one thing to break even.
This change allows the athletic department to focus on its core function, the success of student athletes academically and athletically and in competition.
That doesn't explain anything.
And but also remember, Michael Crow, the president at Arizona State, had a lot of egg on his face when it came to joining the Big 12 and buying into the viability of the Pac-12 was worth, $50 million a year or more in the TV deal. And he was a big proponent of that study and really pushed it and really, really did and thought Arizona State was never going to need to join it. They were very disdainful of the Big 12 until they needed it to happen. And so he's had to eat, no pun intended, he's had to eat a lot of crow here. But he's looked bad in this. And for the majority of his tenure, they've not helped out athletics at all. They made bad hires at athletic director, at head football coach, all these different things they did. Their athletic department talked about at length on not just this podcast or on many other shows about how is Arizona State not good at things. Well, it's because their president didn't give a crap about sports. And then a couple years ago, he was made to give a crap. And this is one of the things you do to fix a problem that you helped create.
Yep. Well, they have money that they didn't have, or they don't have it because it's probably paid off many of the bills that they have. Jamie Pollard then responded this morning. Fascinating. Some see this as whining. Feel sorry for those people. Must be miserable seeing the world through negative goggles. The optimist says, wow, how does ISU continue to find ways to always be successful despite financial differences? And then he put in capital letters, our culture.
Well, I think it's just natural for people on Twitter, especially, to take everything negative. How could you not?
That's what it is.
It's like 99% negative. Like the majority of stuff that I see on there is slanted that direction anyway. So I think people are just programmed to see that. And also, when you're saying not going to remain any easier to remain competitive, I guess the way we need to read that is like most athletic director posts is like, oh, so you need more money. Mm-hmm. So that's okay. Sorry, we actually thought it might be something different for once. It was just whining, or it was pointing out something that's unique and different. Oh, so it's just more money again. So, yeah, I think most athletic directors, when they speak now, it's about money to some extent. Maybe this is a kick in the pants for Iowa State. I need to know more exactly. I don't really totally understand the subsidy thing. I'm not smart about stuff like that. Maybe Jason Shear can fill us in, because I know that while he covers Arizona, he knows plenty about Arizona State. But, I think Jamie Pollard's a great guest, and I guess you take it how you want to, but he wasn't whining, according to him, so that's good to know.
Yeah, Jason will be around the corner here in about 15 minutes or so to give us an idea. But I've seen him discuss this, too, about Arizona State and their debt. Ryan Silverfield, he's the head coach at Paul Memphis, and broke down how he's trying to navigate revenue sharing. This was in an interview. He said, I was an economics major, never thought I'd actually have to use it, as he's now using his dollars and cents, so to speak, and maybe cents in two different ways to spell it. Thought I'd never have to use it. Memphis head coach Ryan Silverfield on managing NIL, salary caps, and more.
Yeah, this is one of the best young coaches in football right now, and if he can figure out how to, for a school like Memphis that is going to get a big influx from FedEx. Like, they're very supported by a gigantic corporation, which is good. They're going to have a new stadium. They're going to have all these things, but that doesn't catch them up to the people they want to be caught up to. You know, they wanted to be in the Big 12. They want to be in the ACC. They want to be somewhere in a power conference. So if he can find a way to manage that and help them maximize their dollars, then great. Although I do not think he's going to be there longer than 2 more years, just because of the fact that he's so damn good. He's a very good coach. He's a very good play caller. He really knows how to identify talent well. So I feel like some of the big boys are going to come snatch him up soon. And if they don't, they're insane.
Yeah, he's kind of a nice quote. Speaking of quotes, Deion Sanders was, I don't know if they were in the weight room or not, but Shiloh Sanders was talking to his father, who, of course, is one of the fastest human beings in the history of ever, and was known for running whatever he wanted to if he ran a 40. And he was trying to ask his dad about how he worked towards being that fast. Just listen to this clip, Shiloh and Deion, and in response.
I ran a 42 for breakfast. Think about it.
All right, so look, there's no video you running it, so we're just going to say.
I don't need video.
All right.
Our people are there.
I haven't talked to anyone that ever seen it, but you ran it though. All right, we see Muhammad Ali box, but I ain't seen you run 40. But it's all right. I seen land on the moon,
but I'm N.O. I'm N.O. in all my races.
I seen videos of Malcolm X, but I ain't see you running the 40. But all right.
Malcolm X.
What did you have to do technique-wise, like, to help me run or whatever?
Did Picasso train to paint?
Yes. He probably mixed it.
Picasso didn't train to paint.
Painters get their paint ready how they want it. So how did you get ready?
I don't think Martin Luther practiced. I had a dream.
So you just. I just thought that was hilarious. Shiloh having fun. I thought that's a great moment. And did Picasso have to learn how to paint? Nope. It was pretty much he just had it, right?
I mean, that's a good point. Why is there not footage of Deion running a 40?
Yeah, that's why they didn't. I guess they didn't tape the combine back then.
And there is a lot of footage of Malcolm X out there you can find on YouTube. There's a lot of footage of a lot of people, but you can't find Deion. So that's actually a fair point by Shiloh, and that's just some fun father-son back and forth there. But Deion was a special athlete, man. I mean, he can't run probably much at all now with his toe issues and all of that, but he was a freak show for sure.
Yeah, I would love to have seen, like, I know they're doing this Noah Lyles and Tyreek Hill race here soon. I would have loved to see just Bo Jackson versus Deion straight up and down, because those are the two fastest, like, those are the two most legendary when it comes to, I mean, we couldn't even start the clock. It was so they were standing next to us when we said go. Kind of legends when it comes to running the 40.
We had a guest on yesterday, Kendall Cout from East Texas A&M, who ran a 4.27 at a pro day up in Commerce. Deion used to refer to Kendall Cout, because he used to coach him a little bit, as Darrell Green Jr., little Darrell Green. And we had him on the show yesterday, and there were some football players that just naturally had amazing speed. Deion, of course, was one of them. Jason Shear in about 8 to 10 minutes. Do you want to get into this NIL-related congressional hearing or not? I don't care either way.
I can kind of sum it up for you really quickly.
How about you just give the bullet points and Paul can explain them?
12th NIL-related congressional hearing starting up front in House of Judiciary Subcommittee, specifically examining a possible NCAA antitrust exemption. A track coach from Georgia, Carol Smith Gilbert, saying that if resources go elsewhere when you're talking about revenue sharing, I don't see how we maintain and develop Olympic athletes. They had the meeting. It ended. And for the most part, guess what? It was split between Democrats and Republicans down party lines. Jim Jordan, the chair, sorts through the ways in college athletes get compensation. They get scholarship and benefits. They get house revenue sharing. They get market NIL, booster collective NIL. It's far from uncompensated labor. The idea of uncompensated labor is just false. Meanwhile, Chris McIntosh, who's the Wisconsin AD, when Jordan also mentioned that Greg Sankey has told him, under the employment model, he anticipates that schools will drop to an NCAA minimum of 16 sports. The Wisconsin AD replies, I think that is an accurate statement.
Chris McIntosh also made a very unfair reference to his, or kind of muddy reference to his career in the NFL about how he just got cut and nobody told him. He didn't show up. Like, he retired and didn't tell the Seahawks he was retiring, so they didn't bother to tell him he was cut either. So there's a lot of disingenuous things going on all sides of this. They're trying
Doesn't that just make you go, like, why are you lying about that? What else are you like? What are you lying about that matters?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're lying about something as simple as that, what are you actually lying about?
Yeah, he doesn't want to see, again, he thinks collective bargaining will be bad, but what happened with him in the NFL was collectively bargained by his union.
Yes,
so he can't really complain about that much because he had a say in it. Right now, nobody has any say in anything. Like, that's all that they're trying to do. And the only way for this to work is for Congress, the guidelines they need to pass are guidelines to get collective bargaining going and move this along, because if they really do want an antitrust exemption, like the NFL, like Major League Baseball, like these leagues have with that antitrust exemption, you need to have a fair exchange of ideas and negotiation when it comes to compensation. If not, then they're not you can't get an antitrust exemption if you're not going to do things to ensure that you should not be the only entity in this. It's like, that's where, I don't know. They're going to have all these hearings, and nothing's going to happen.
Well, Amanda Kristovich, our good friend, was basically saying that today, too.
There's nothing going to happen because you cannot go on television as a Democrat or Republican and say, I saved college sports, and anybody's going to care about that right now.
Midwinter, I wish someone would explain during this hearing that there's a way to have college sports without football and basketball revenue being relied on to fund the other sports. That's really the big issue. That needs to be addressed in the whole situation. So there we are with Midwinter, who's an NIL, and he's an attorney. He's kind of jumped on this wave of a lot of attorneys that are covering this process.
That's a big part of it, is that, one of the things that has always made Title IX more complicated, I'll just give you this example, is that you have football, which is now a 105 scholarship sport, but forever was an 85 scholarship sport. Football is played only by men. It's not like basketball or golf or tennis or, baseball and softball that, soccer, any other sport, you can have the male and female component. But there is no women's tackle football. There's not. So, and then the largest women's sports still don't get up to 85 scholarships. So there's not one sport where you can balance that out. So again, if you're talking about football and basketball revenue, I mean, there's a way to separate that out and then still make it equitable and have college sports. It's just part of this, people don't like change, and they're being forced into it. And a lot of them just are hoping they're going to bury their head in the sand and hope it just goes back to as close as it can to the way it was, as opposed to trying to innovate, because innovation is hard. Innovation is scary, but that's what's needed right now.
You and I'm tired of meetings without any kind of results. That's what I'm tired of. That's the way for me to put it, as far as much as I possibly can. Anything to tie a bow on that, Craig?
I thought Paul summed it up really well there. Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything else to add to that.
All right, when we come back, Jason Shear, Craig Bohl, the AFCA, American Football Coaches Association Executive Director, I recorded an interview with him earlier today. He was on his way into Austin to go talk to the president of the Texas High School Football Coaches Association on a lot of what we just mentioned, but other stories involving the future, the current and future of college athletics and much more. And this is 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. Forever, everything I know. I'll never get used to this.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports, this 4 o'clock hour, and Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority, joins us on 365 Sports. Arizona men's basketball, obviously very good. Tournament starting, in fact, it was earlier today, with a game already done and a game being played right now. Jason, thanks for your time. We got a lot of things to get to, including, let's start with this that has nothing to do with University of Arizona, but maybe it does. Arizona State and the subsidy that they got the athletic department square. What is the story with that? Because I saw where Jamie Pollard, we discussed that, said this is another way for us. It's going to make it hard for us to keep up with what we're doing at Iowa State.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's funny because the quote in the Republic was basically it's like a magic pen. So basically, in order to balance the books, the athletic department received a bit more than $50 million. That's got to be. I mean, I don't know nationally where that ranks exactly, but that's got to be one of the highest. It's one of the highest heard. And it's another thing that kind of changes the model, right? Like if you're another school trying to compete with these numbers, now you kind of have to look into that and see how you're going to operate your AD, if it's, an auxiliary unit or if it's part of the, whole university and things like that. So it'll be very, very interesting to see if this changes anything nationally.
Jason, the first year in the Big 12, about what you expected for Arizona now as they head to the tournament? I mean, was there a dip? Did you think everything went about according to plan?
Yeah, I mean, out of conference play was actually more disappointing than in conference. In conference is what I expected. No easy games. Can lose to anyone. Arizona could also beat anyone. Very competitive. If you take a day off, you're going to lose, and exciting fan bases. I think that's the biggest thing that maybe if people didn't realize before, they definitely realize it now. Is in the Pac-12 you would go to half the gyms and they'd be empty, and that was very, very rare in the Big 12. So I think overall it's what I expected. I definitely didn't expect Arizona to win the conference or for anything to come easy like it did at times in the Pac-12. And I think overall, upset here or there, that this is kind of what I expected and what it'll be like moving forward.
So, Jason, how do you feel about where they sit, 2011, third in the Big 12, entering the conference tournament now, which will be exciting just for the first time to be in KC and all that. What do you think about Arizona as we enter or right here firmly now in March?
Yeah, I mean, they're not playing well as of late. They definitely have some things to fix. Their defense has been flat out awful over the last 2 weeks or so. But then you kind of take a look at it in the teams they've lost to. I mean, at Kansas on Senior Day, no one beats them on Senior Day at Kansas. Iowa State, BYU, who's obviously one of the hottest teams of the country, and then Houston. And so, that's 4 of their losses. And it's those are 4 of the best teams in the country right now. And so it's hard to kind of evaluate where Arizona is. I think that there's some things like most schools in the country that they have to improve on. And their margin of error just isn't very big this season. And so going into the tournament, I mean, they could beat Kansas or lose to Kansas and neither result would be a surprise. And that's just the kind of the way it'll be the same way in the NCAA tournament. It's kind of a crapshoot with Arizona because their margin of error is just slim.
So did Tommy Lloyd stir things up when he talked about the home crowd for Arizona in Tucson?
I think the timing did. I think the comments, he's not far off. He's really not. I think that McHale is a great place. It definitely compares with most places that I've been to. There's some things that could be improving, but I think what was taken poorly was he was asked about Kansas and the atmosphere, and he turned to Arizona and said, we have to be better. And they just lost to Kansas. And so I think that the general feeling among a large chunk of fans is you didn't really have to put down Arizona to build up Kansas. And he clarified today in his presser that he loves Arizona, he's happy, but he's always looking to improve. And I think that's kind of different than what he said, which is, we have some catching up to do. And, just the timing. And it kind of puts a little bit more pressure on him to win because the argument would be like, hey, you've lost, 5 of your last 8 games or whatever it is. But, it's a situation where he's been vocal about it. He wants to improve McHale. And a part of me thinks it was kind of a shot at the administration because there's certain things that haven't been run well at home games. And he just kind of didn't say it right. So it came off more as a shot at fans.
Jason, what do you think about this team's depth as far as making a deep run when it comes to the tournament?
I like the team's depth overall. I think it's an interesting mix. KJ Lewis is a good sixth man, but he's been struggling as of late. When he's on, he's very good. He has a wrist injury that's really hampered his shooting. His shooting has been absolutely terrible. But he's still really good defensively. The question is going to be Carter Bryant, true freshman that's had some really good games, and there's some other games where he's really looked like a freshman, and he's kind of looks like a baby out there sometimes. And he's going to be key because he could really shoot the ball. He might be the best pure shooter on the team. But the problem is because, like most freshmen, it's kind of feast or famine. You don't get those in-between games. You're either going to get 15 points from Carter or 4. And so the depth is considerably better when he plays better. But they'll go eight men deep in the tournament, and they'll be, pretty fine with it. It's pretty solid bench.
I think Paul may have brought this up earlier about Arizona the first year in the Big 12, but we know the football team struggled too. Where are they? Where is the fan base, the athletic department, those who matter on Arizona year one overall in the Big 12?
It's positive. It's positive. I think football, it was kind of a wake-up call, to be honest. And Brent Brennan said that, the wake-up call was they would line up against other teams, and he pointed to UCF. He goes, we're lining against UCF, which people may not think is a powerhouse in the Big 12, but he goes, their linemen were significantly bigger than ours. And I think that's the difference. Is in the Pac-12, when you lined up, Washington and Oregon and USC would probably be bigger. The other teams would be kind of on par with Arizona. And the Big 12, the lines were just, Arizona was overmatched physically more often than not. I should have said Utah also, but overmatched physically than not. And I think that was the big wake-up call. And in the offseason, they went and, they got a lot of big men. So I think that, there's some differences with football and adjustment. But I haven't heard anything negative at all with how the conference is run or anything like that. And definitely not on the level of the Pac-12. But, really no coach has been vocal. No admin has been vocal to be about any real obvious complaints with the Big 12.
Jason, Fafita, and now McMillan is, of course, going to be a part of the NFL, will be a first-round pick. Who are some of his guys that he now will lean on a little bit? And, of course, there's always the transfer portal, but he's going to miss his Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I mean, you don't replace a guy like T-Mac. You just, and if you do, you're probably Alabama or a school like that. But Chris Hunter, who was their second best receiver last year, returned. They really prioritized him in the offseason. So they're, they took a very big step by bringing him back. And then they rebuilt the room completely through the transfer portal and in high school recruiting. They added Trey Spivey from Kansas State. They added Luke Wysong from New Mexico, who's really good. Chris Hudson from Washington State, who's one of their top receivers. So they rebuilt the room completely. They have a new offensive coordinator, so the whole offense is going to look significantly different than it did last season. They're not going to replace T-Mac, but, the overall depth of the wide receiver room was not good last year. It's basically T-Mac and Hunter, and that's it. And so they kept Hunter. They added a bunch of other wide receivers, and I think what we'll see this season is Noah kind of spread the ball out a little bit more than he did last season.
Dwayne Aquina, go ahead. Dwayne Aquina obviously has had a heck of a career. He was there. It's a great hire by Brennan, but then Texas loses Joseph to the NFL, and here they come. They get Dwayne Aquina. Is that a big loss for them?
Yeah, it is. I mean, and he wasn't – I guess you could say he got demoted to secondary coach, but and Danny Gonzalez is the new defensive coordinator, but it's a big loss because while I don't know if Dwayne's a great defensive coordinator, he is most definitely one of the best position coaches in the secondary ever. Like his numbers, the guys he put in the NFL, the awards and all that, they speak for themselves. Arizona is basically, they're readjusting their coaching staff. They hired a young linebacker coach. They're going to make the announcement later today, a younger guy, and kind of move things around. But you don't just replace a guy like Dwayne Aquina, and it's a situation where they had to upgrade the roster on the defensive side of the ball, and they're hoping that the new coaches will do well and all that. But at the end of the day, losing a guy like Aquina is obviously a loss.
Do you feel like they will have a running game this year? Because once Krosky Merritt went out last year, they were kind of up a creek.
Yeah. I mean, they loved him, and they thought he was going to be a major player for them, and then they lose him, and it really hurt. Honestly, it hurt more than I thought it would, because I thought that the depth overall was fine. They bring back Kedrick Ricino from Ole Miss. He was on the team last year. He'll get more carries. The big one is Ishmael Mahdi from Texas State. He put up some really big numbers at Texas State. They added him. He'll probably, in my opinion, be the number one back on the team. I like him quite a bit. We don't know what the offense is going to look like. It's kind of air raid. But when Seth Faggy was at Marshall last year, they ran the ball quite a bit as well. But it should be good. On paper, it looks good. Now it's just a matter of keeping these guys healthy and all that. But on paper, they added Cornelius Warren, a high school kid. They added multiple high school kids. They added Quincy Craig out of Portland State, kind of a do-it-all running back. So they have the depth there. Mike Mitchell from Utah is another one they add. So the depth is definitely there. They just need a guy, hopefully Mahdi. I know that's the hope. Steps up and becomes kind of a major player.
Jason, we took every team in the Big 12, last question, and thanks for your time today. We took every team when the schedules were released back the week of the Super Bowl, and we've gone one by one with each one of them. And now we've moved to a different conference. What was the overall reaction to Arizona's schedule based on, sometimes in this conference, you don't know from year to year, but the overall reaction to their schedule?
it has its tough stretches. It's another weird year where Kansas State is another out-of-conference game. It's got a tough stretch overall towards the end, but they get a lot of good games at home. Like they get BYU at home this year. They get Kansas at home, Baylor at home, and so Oklahoma State at home. So like there's good home games. Their home schedule is fine. It's probably better than last year. They had a really difficult stretch last year at some point, but you don't really look at the schedule and go, oh man, they're screwed. Obviously there's improvements that need to be made on the field and all that. But overall, it doesn't read like a schedule where you say, man, Arizona has just no chance at this thing.
Jason, thank you very much for your time. It's great to hear you again.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Jason Shear with Wildcat Authority with us on many things, from Arizona to even a couple of notes about that subsidy to try to get some information from him on that. And, of course, the football team, basketball team, as the tournament is underway up in Kansas City. This is 365 Sports.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Austin this morning.
I'm taking off to go to Austin to spend some time with their dear friend Joe Martin with the Texas High School Coaches Association.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be making a run through the state capitol, getting to know some of our state legislators.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Appreciate your time. Emery Winters recording us. Emery, whenever you're ready.
We're good to go.
Okay. Here we go. Craig Bohl, the Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association with me, David Smoak on 365 Sports. I don't even know sometimes where to start. And I'm sure you've got can you imagine juggling any more either unknowns, uncertainties, or changes as you are right now?
You know what? No, not at all. And I feel for some of my colleagues that are out there. Coaches are about rolling up their sleeves and, having a plan and working the plan. And when the goalpost keeps on changing, it has been challenging to say the least. I am confident, though, if we can get the right stakeholders at the table, we can come out on the other side. And I'm not going to say it's the same old way we had it before, but I think we can come out in a better place. But what is going to be important is for our coaches to have a voice at the table.
When you say the right stakeholders, who is that?
Well, I think there needs to be a composition of not only some conference commissioners, some athletic directors, certainly student athletes. But, when this whole agenda got rolled out with NIL and transfer at the time, our presence within the NCAA, I was on the committee at the time, but our voices were not heard. We tried to make a point of maybe some unintended consequences, and those consequences are what we're living in now. And so when I say stakeholders, I do believe a group of head football coaches need to have a presence when we come up and make some better decisions moving forward.
I spoke or traded text messages, Craig, with Jim Grobe, Phil Bennett, and Mac Brown.
Oh, boy, some old friends right there.
Yeah, and just to kind of get their perspective, and then some other coaches too. But what is the number one what would at least stabilize or calm things down? Would it be whatever this house settlement's going to be? Would it be a salary cap? Would it be revenue? What is the one thing that has to happen?
Well, here's what I am going to let everybody know. The AFCA has taken a position. We've been up to the United States Capitol on 3 different occasions, and the first thing that we're championing is to get these representatives that are called agents that are representing these current student athletes or high school athletes to have some guardrails, to have them be regulated, to certified, because right now anybody can say that they're an agent. And so what is occurring is some exploitation of some of these younger athletes, and some of the things that have been done are truly tragic. We believe they certainly need representation. They just need to have some accurate representation, and then we need some more transparency. So that's the very first thing. And whether that is, nothing's going to change that need, whether the house settlement comes in, however that comes out. They need representation now. They're going to need representation in the future. We're just saying these agents, we need credible agents. And right now we have a host of guys who really are doing some things that are unethical, and that's being kind.
It seemed like anytime the NCAA tries to do something, they're sued. And that's kind of how all this started, because forever and ever, they were able to pretty much do what they wanted. And there was, it was like the IRS. You didn't mess with them.
Right.
What does a salary cap do if, in fact, that was to be installed? And is that something you're for or against?
Well, there's so many things that I'm going to be guarded as far as making grandiose statements, since I'm representing the AFCA. I do know that there's a number of coaches out there who are for that, would like to see some semblance of stability and some semblance of the known, and then maybe more competitive equity.
So you coached at North Dakota State. You obviously had success there, a great amount of success, and then Wyoming. So you have been on the side that seemed like right now that they're almost drowning, trying to keep up, or what decisions they're going to make. Do the larger schools want to just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so a salary cap to them doesn't mean anything? Is there enough of caring about the game itself?
Well, I'm certainly concerned about that. We understand the popularity of college football right now and the great scope of college football. And coaches that are working in some of these more high-profile schools are certainly they want to make sure that there's equity. I do think that there's always going to be a place for a school like North Dakota State or Wyoming. Now, whether we would have been able to maintain Josh Allen at Wyoming, I don't want to make speculation on that. He certainly was a player that we found and developed, and he graduated from Wyoming. I think you're seeing more of those players migrate to different schools now for different reasons. However, there's always going to be a place for those schools, and I'm in hopes as we fashion a plan forward that there's enough flexibility for those schools to be relevant in college football.
What is the overall feeling, Craig, you get for transfer portal, the window or windows? And do you feel like that can get tightened up and then keep it that way where at least you know that?
Well, as the AFCA, we had a head coaches meeting that was well attended. We had a 4-hour point of discussion on our opinions on how this should get rolled out next year. And we came up with a unanimous decision that we feel like for the betterment of college football, for the student athletes and the programs and where we're at, there's not going to be a perfect landing spot, but our coaches came together and compromised, and there was meaningful discussion for 4 straight hours on one topic. The meeting was heavily produced. It was there were electronic votes that were casted. There was also a voice vote at the end. And as a group with the AFCA, we proposed one window starting January 2nd. That would be a window for notification. Doesn't mean that they have to decide at the end of that, but it's just a window for notification from the 2nd to the 12th of January. What became apparent was there was no appetite to have a window that occurred during the playing season, i.e. the postseason. However, we could not find a date that would be comfortable for everything. Obviously, if you start on the 2nd, there's still going to be a couple teams still playing. Mm-hmm. And Kirby Smart from Georgia was one of the guys that said, hey, I've lived that, but there's no perfect spot because if we move it back later, if the proposed window moved back later, then there are going to be a lot of schools that had started already that would not even have an opportunity to secure a player who chose to enter the window. And so we knew, one, let's get it out of the playing season. All the unintended consequences with players being tampered with, players being forced to make a decision while their team is still playing. We've seen all those things play out. And so we wanted, by and large, to get the majority of players through that and then have an opportunity for them to enroll in a school. And then coaches felt like it was imperative for their players to be able to have an 8-week strength and conditioning progression before they even started to entertain ideas of spring ball activities. We did look at a later starting date, and there was some cumbersome problems there. We also had to recognize as college football, we don't control an academic calendar. And so this was the best date that we came to. We don't feel like the 2 window models is beneficial for anybody, which is why we're proposing one window.
Is there a concern, no matter what you want, whatever the coaches feel like is good for the game, and that's another story about whether everyone wants the best, what's best for college football, is that because of the Pavia ruling at Vanderbilt or others, that there's that you could say you can only transfer twice, or you can only. How do you? That just seems to be so wide open.
Well, it certainly is, and the AFCA's had an ongoing dialogue with the attorney generals who brought suit against the NCAA. We've had offline conversations with them, finding their logic on that. I think as things stand right now, we have to recognize that the student athletes have the ability to transfer multiple times during the course of their career. What is concerning, though, is when you hear certain players actually trying to transfer twice within 1 year, a competitive year. And so there's some things that we've got to get our arms wrapped around. I do know, those members of Congress have reached out to the AFCA, both in the House and the Senate, and also from the Republican side and the Democratic side. They want to hear what the coaches have to say. And like I said before, we don't deserve a seat at the head of the table, but we're the practitioners, we're the boots on the ground, and they want to hear what our opinion is.
What do you hear about tampering? And is it as prevalent and just wide open as what we seem to hear?
Well, the term that is getting bantered all around the country is the Wild West. Between Texas and Wyoming, I live the Wild West, and that's exactly where we're at in the tampering. It's an onslaught. And it is frustrating because of, once again, as coaches, we're proposing to get some of these agents that are certified and regulated, get them. And the NCAA does not have subpoena power. This proposal would be a federal law. If it is found that somebody is tampering, there's going to be subpoena power and there's going to be penalties. Right now, we don't have that, and we have the true Wild West.
And you hear coaches say that, but it seems like, do we trust that not everybody themselves is tampering?
Rephrase that again, because I want to make sure I'm speaking correctly.
For example, you hear about coaches who say that their players are being tampered with, no matter what level.
Right.
But are you concerned that? But you don't hear anyone say, and I'm not using the term, Coach X at University X is tampering because of blowback that they themselves might be doing the same thing somewhere else.
Well, I'm going to be guarded about that simply because that's a broad-based statement.
Okay.
There's allegations that are always being made. Coaches are competitive. I do think, we need to make sure that we're operating in an ethical realm. But what is so cumbersome is this enterprise now has gotten so large that, maybe people representing the school in a third-party way might be proposing or acting like this is what the coaches are saying.
Craig, if you had a team, again, you did, and as
Right.
successful as you were, and the transfer portal is what it is, how do you determine really playing time for somebody that might be second on the depth chart, but pretty good, but you have to not appease them. You have to do what's best for your team. How do you balance that to make sure that the player stays happy?
Well, I'm out of the saddle. I have dealt with a lot of my colleagues that are still coaching right now, and I know those topics get brought up. That's hard for me to say simply because I'm not in their chair right now. I did evolve, though. After we had 1 year where there was a lot of players that went into the portal, and Tom Berman, my boss, came over and he was concerned that, I wasn't going to change. And I told him I'll evolve. My stance was to do what was best for the team right now. You had a responsibility to those seniors on the team to win with the best players that they had right now. So I was not going to compromise on potential playing time to appease somebody. And I also know that we're pretty straightforward at Wyoming. If players wanted to be there, we wanted those guys there, and the guys that didn't want to be there, we're going to fit in. Now, does that model work everywhere? I don't think so. But that was a cloth that I was cut from. Those coaches that you just mentioned earlier, whether it was Jim Grove, Phil Bennett, or Mac Brown, they're out of coaching.
Right.
I'm out of coaching now. And I do think the younger coaches right now are doing a better job of adapting. And how that comes about with playing time, I'm not in position to say.
Do coaches and should coaches have the ability to say that's the value of said player? How do you think that works right now?
Well, that's $1 million question. Different programs are out there judging players. There is some conjecture. We're working closely with the NFL. I do know the NFL sometimes will come up with a draftable grade. And some of those metrics have been used to say, okay, this guy's going to be drafted at this slotting in the end of the first round. Therefore, his value is X. I do know there's a whole departments all across the country with general managers that begin to sort out where they see the value of players. And obviously each program's different, how they see a starting left tackle or a wide receiver versus a fullback. And so it's science. And I know a lot of resources have been placed into it. It's almost like a whole pro personnel model.
Craig Bohl with us, the American Football Coaches Association. A couple of more things. When you have revenue sharing, if in fact that ends up being part of what we have with the settlement, can you still have collectives outside of that,
right,
that are a part of college football?
Well, that's the $1 million question right now. First of all, we're all for clarity and a settlement that's coming, and hopefully that's coming here in the near future in April. That's what we've heard. And once those numbers are codified, then there's going to be some clarity moving forward. And what I've been told is the model moving forward for a student athlete to be able to access revenues off of his name, image, and likeness are going to be tethered to an actual value that will be, certified by, I've heard a large firm called Deloitte. So meaning there will be a value if I'm actually doing a TV commercial for a car dealership. What is that like-minded value going to be? And while that may not be an accurate science, you're going to get away from the whole inflated collective, this whole cottage industry that basically went off the rails.
You mentioned Kirby Smart and one of his ideas, and he's been through it because he's been successful.
Right.
Are you concerned, Craig, in any way that two conferences are the ones making all the decisions for all of college football?
Well, that narrative's out there. I said in a lot of these meetings, I can tell you, I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
I do know the Big 10 and the SEC is garnering, a larger portion of the TV contracts, and, they're bantering around CFP staging and things of that nature. But I think for the betterment of college football, I've sat in those rooms with the commissioners, and I think that there's much more of an attitude that they want to be more inclusive as opposed to exclusive. So I'm not all for this narrative I'm hearing that just two conferences are going to basically do whatever they want. I don't believe that's the case.
Well, I mean, if you're in the meeting, that's why I asked, because, I mean, you're there sitting there watching it. A couple more things. I know you got to go. House settlement is, I think, April the 7th, whatever that date might be.
Yep.
It's a month from now. What and how or when will the changes take effect if, in fact, it's approved?
Well, I think what you're going to see then is in athletic departments right now this has been coming down the pike for several months here. We thought the settlement was actually going to occur during September, and it got pushed back. I think what you'll see in the short term is athletic departments have already budgeted how they're going to come up with this resources. GMs have already speculated out where their payroll will be. And so you'll see a much more concrete, and there's certainly going to be a lot more transparency, which is what we're all wanting. These backroom deals and numbers that are being floated around, are not necessarily part of competitive equity. And so we're looking for some stability, and we're looking for transparency. And so I think that you'll see that coming in. I'm in hopes sometime. I don't know if it can be accomplished before this next year, since a lot of these contracts are set now.
Right.
But I think it's going to be done in the near future.
Okay, my last question for you. You are a coach. You obviously had the connection to Tom Osborne, Bob Devaney, Nebraska, and all that. It was as stable a coaching staff over the years as ever. And then they started to get fractured. And then they've struggled since that time for the most part. Matt Rule's trying to get that back together. One of the things that I heard when it came to the transfer portal for players was coaches can leave at any time, and they do. And you left. Is that fair to bring that up, or is there loyalty anywhere in college football?
No, there is loyalty, and I chose to stay for 10 years at Wyoming and retire from there. Now I left North Dakota State after we won our third national championship. I had signed an extension that had a buyout with that extension, so I paid that buyout. And coaches, when they leave, either they're negotiating that buyout or they're paying the buyout in full. What we're basically saying then is coaches do have the ability to leave, but they're on the hook for some assets or some dollars. And so I think what everybody's looking at is saying, okay, if a player would in fact leave and he has the ability to do that, well, to negotiate out a contract and how that comes about, there needs to be some financial compensation for that as well. And that's the argument on the other side.
Like the buyout factor for coaches.
Correct. Yeah. And so this adage of coaches coming and going, and this is a shout out to Matt Rule, Coach Rule, pulling for you hard. You got a lot of fans down here in Central Texas. That's my old school.
I know.
And there's greatness there, so just keep on chucking along.
By the way, you may not know this, but in the background, you'll see that Huskers helmet. I was born in Omaha off at Air Force Base, and so I've been a lifelong fan. So I hope that happens too. And I know what you meant there and what it meant to you. Yeah. Craig, you've got a plate full. Grant Taft, Todd Berry. Grant started this and did an amazing job. Todd Berry connected Grant Taft to where you are now. There's a lot on your plate. We wish you the very best of luck.
Thanks a lot. Always appreciate being on, guys.
Thank you. Craig Bohl, the executive director of the American Football Coaches Association, 365 Sports. Okay, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yep.
That's Craig Bohl. When he mentioned, which to me this makes sense, but will there be a lawsuit? Obviously, the settlement, maybe they get all this set. So coaches leave. If they have a contract, there's a buyout. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there is. Do you think we could actually get to a point if a player has an NIL deal that's not more than 1 year that decides to transfer from TCU to Colorado, that player will then have to buy himself out to be able to leave?
Yes, I do. I think that's the collective bargain step, like that you have to get to.
You think that should be the?
I think that's the.
I think it would be healthy.
Isn't it the easiest way to put a guardrail on this? Like, they want something, have them sign a contract. You can still transfer if you want to, but there are going to be buyout terms. So, to make you think about it a lot more than you have. I don't know. I think that's I think that's the shortest road to get there. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, the shortest road to get there would be to make them employees. Yeah. And all this would be taken care of, but they just refuse to do that because of the multitude of reasons that they apparently have. But that would be the simplest way, guys. Mm-hmm. We all know that. Here, sign this contract that has all these things laid in place, and you're an employer, or you're an employee and I'm the employer, and if you do this, I can fire you. If you leave, then I can, demand a buyout, or contractually you'd be obligated to, yeah, I mean, if you wanted to get guardrails, the thing to do would be to have them as employees, but I know that creates a host of other problems specifically for the schools that they don't want to have to deal with. So
yeah, schools don't want that, right? Are they the ones that are against the employee situation?
That's the whole story, yeah. Of course, it's the schools. It's absolutely 100% the schools. They're the ones that didn't want to pay players. They're the ones that did everything in their power to not pay players. And then once they realized they had to do it, then they said, well, if we're going to do it, then we're going to do the typical college thing. We're going to go all the way in to the extreme. So now, how can we abuse this system? And how do we get around these actual guardrails that are in place? So, they don't want to play by any rules or rules they can't bend, and they never have. And, they're the ones that have refused because it would be great for the players to have employment status. It would be great on a number of levels. It'd be a lot easier to follow along with for everybody involved in having to classify these athletes as one thing or another, or figure out what is legally lawful and what isn't. I mean, all of that would be cleared up, just boom, like that. But again, there's a multitude of reasons. And yes, it's only the schools that are standing in the way of that because they don't want to have to pay the piper any more than they have to pay the piper. So Greed is what led us all here. That's why we're here.
Yep.
It's outright greed. And you're seeing the greedy people being as greedy as they possibly can for as long as they possibly can until they just can't any longer. And there's some people predict they won't be able to do that for much longer without it turning into full-on employment and a separate league and things that would lead to that. But, yeah, it's clearly the schools that are the ones stopping that from happening.
The hardest thing about telling a greedy entity that they're greedy is that they never once thought they were greedy. Like, they just thought this was not to say that there weren't some people at the top going like, ha, 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 ha. Sure. You know, this isn't like an airline or something that all of a sudden changes their policy because there's people at the top doing stock buybacks. This is just an entity that saw a bunch of money coming in. They understood the model the way that it was. And then every time that they were brought up with the like, hey, you know that eventually they're going to figure out that you can't own their name, right? They'd be like, no, they're not. They're just dumb kids. You know, they're not going to know that. And, like, they just kind of push it off. And then every time it was come with, like, well, we can't afford that. And you're like, well, I mean, yeah, in 1975 you couldn't afford it. But, I mean, I just saw my coach buy a fourth house. So
Would any of this started had there not been video games?
Eventually there would have been a thing.
I mean, some lawyer somewhere is eventually going to go, look at the billions of dollars that we can make. So, yeah, of course
the video game was an easy flashpoint. Like, it was an easy, like, well,
I don't think it's any coincidence that, and I don't know the story. I mean, maybe Ed O'Bannon had a cousin that was a lawyer or something, but, being out in Los Angeles, I feel like he probably had people that were like, dude, y'all are getting screwed on this deal.
I interviewed Ed O'Bannon. I don't know if you remember this years ago, Smokey, but he had a book that came out or something, and so they set an availability to us. I had to record it by myself, and it was I said, so tell me how this came about, and his kids' friends were bringing over the video game for him to autograph, and he was like, huh? Yeah. Like, wait a minute, how am I on this thing? And so then one of his kids was like, yeah, you get a bunch of money from this, right? He's like, I didn't even know I was on it. And so then he called lawyers and was like, hey, how are they allowed to use my face to sell this thing without giving me some money? And here's the thing. If Ed O'Bannon was a greedier human being, he could have just made it about Ed O'Bannon.
Yeah, no,
but he didn't.
Class action, right?
Yeah, he decided like, hey, wait a minute. So I'm not the only one they've done this to. I'm not the only one that's here. Oh no, we're going to make a big thing of it. So in that regard, like, yeah. So it came out that way. But yeah.
All right, how old was he when his kids told him that?
I mean,
was he done?
Yeah, he was done. Like,
okay.
So
I was going to say, because he would have been at the age where you thought he would have been playing the game.
Yeah, he was done. He was done in the NBA. You're talking about like a 10, 12-year-old kid.
Yeah.
People are coming over and like, oh, that's your dad. So that's what happened. Or like, I don't know if it was his kids or like nephew, but like kids in his circle had friends that were like coming over and like wanted him to autograph it because they thought it was so cool that this guy that they knew. And I think EA Sports used that. It was fun. It was a great photo that they had. But that UCLA team kind of spurred on the late 90s like influx of college basketball because that was UCLA's last title, back in the 90s. I think it was 95, 96 or whatever that was.
Somewhere like that, yeah.
Yeah, so like
was that Larry Brown?
No, Steve Lavin.
Steve
Lavin, because it had the O'Bannon brothers, Bailey, Toby Bailey was on that team. God,
I liked him.
Tyus Edney was the point guard. So it changed everything. And all they had to do, honestly, when all this came about, all they had to do was give everybody $2,800 a month and then raise it as cost of living went up. That's all they were really asking for. And let them get advertising if there were advertising avenues out there for them. So Caleb Williams would have gotten something. The fourth-string quarterback would not have gotten something, but he still would have had something. I mean, he would not have been out there getting NIL money, but, they chose this path, and this is what they're on.
Jim Herrick might have been the coach. And then Lavin, because Herrick was asked to leave because he was talking about a dinner with a recruit, et cetera. That's how he was fired before 97. That championship was, you're right, in 95. All right, when we come back, thanks to Craig Bohl, by the way, for giving us his time. When we come back, we are going through methodically the ACC, each day of school with their schedule. And Clemson, the Tigers, and Dabo Swinney next on 365 Sports. Don Humidor Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco. 48-foot walk in Humidor. The great brands of cigars from all throughout the world, including Cohiba, Padron, and more. Rocky Patel, Arturo Fuente, Ashton, you name it, Macanudo, they have it. Also a wall in the back of the back right of the Humidor that is filled with veteran-owned brand cigars. A lot of them from the state of Texas. In fact, I think most of them from the state of Texas. Vita Dreams, a gummy that helps you go to sleep a little bit easier at night, get more rest. So when that alarm goes off, you don't feel like, although that's probably the case most any day anyway. And they have for bad days. It's a gummy that allows you to get through chronic pain, like I've had recently, back and on and off when it comes to my back left shoulder blade. It's Don Humidor and Coffee Beans, Cheyenne and Joshua in the Townwest Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Allen Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Allen Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
One update from Kansas City, the Big 12 men's basketball tournament. Earlier today, Cincinnati blew out Oklahoma State. They'll play Iowa State first game tomorrow. And Colorado just beat TCU 69-67. The Buffaloes at 13-19. Send TCU home, and now Colorado will play West Virginia. The next game tonight, Arizona State, K-State, then UCF, and Utah. It's time to look at Clemson, the ACC, and their 2025 football schedule.
Yeah, so combing through everybody in the country, basically. It was just supposed to be the Big 12, and now here we've carried it over into pretty much everybody. So Clemson today, as we go alphabetically through the Atlantic Coast Conference, and we'll see, 5 years from now if we're still talking SEC schedules with Clemson. But for now, it's the status quo, and so let's get into the Tigers, who had a pretty good 2024, I'd say. Got into the college football playoff, won the ACC, went 10-4 overall, and then ultimately got cut short against Texas in the second round of the college football playoff. But not bad for a program who a lot of people were predicting was on this downslide, and the coach had lost his touch and was out of touch more than anything else. Paul, do you feel as strongly about that as you did maybe this time a year ago?
No, I think he's adapted fairly well. I'm not sure if he just finally had to cave. Like, I'm curious as to what made the decision for him, and to go and get these people. And I support him not going whole hog on it, but the fact that you have a couple of things and you're like, no, I'm so good at coaching true freshmen that this will work out. Like, well, no. I mean, the best teams are the ones who use everything at their disposal. And he was a bit like the Cowboys of the transfer portal where, no, not doing it. Nobody who doesn't commit to Clemson first off is good, and I can't have him. And now he's gone out and gotten some good players. So I think he's, whether he wanted to or not, finally adapted.
Yes, I think going 10-4 and getting into the playoffs and, being able to hoist the ACC trophy is a successful season. So I think Clemson very much with the statement last year that they are still a force to be reckoned with. But obviously the big picture is larger than just making the playoffs. So how will that work for them this season? Well, it's going to be a fun journey that features a 10 power conference opponent slate. By the way, Clemson on a streak of 14 straight years of 9-win seasons. If you think about that, like a lot of 8 and 5s for people, or 7 and 6s, or at least some kind of blemish, but they've won 9 games, bare minimum, for 14 consecutive years. So that's a pretty incredible mark there. I don't know how long Ohio State's streak might be or somebody along those lines, but pretty cool there. That they've got that going, and just shows you what a good job Dabo's been doing. So can they make it 15 straight? They will open up the season and start things off on that campaign in their attempt to do so with a pretty massive non-conference game on Saturday, August the 30th, as they will take on the LSU Tigers in what should be a hell of a matchup there early on in the season. And that's a game that will be the first meeting between these two teams since they played in the national championship game a few years back. They have not played a ton in the course of their history, Clemson and LSU. It's just been a handful of times. LSU does have the overall 3-1 record, with the most recent meeting coming in 2020 down in New Orleans, as Joe Burrow and that LSU team was pretty special stuff there. But LSU just right out of the gates, that's a pretty fun opener, LSU and Clemson in week 0 there.
Yeah, 3-1 all time, LSU over Clemson. I think they should put some stakes on this, that since it's a regular season game, the winner gets to call their stadium Death Valley.
Yeah.
Until the return trip.
Yeah.
And
It's
the
just
other
the Death
can't.
Valley Bowl or something.
Yeah, the Death Valley Bowl,
yeah.
So it's at what Garrett will call you the fake Death Valley, and not the real Death Valley.
Sure.
Speaking of Garrett, we give a little note. When he gets back next week, he's been traveling the country, going to some famous stadiums throughout.
Yeah.
We have pictures. We'll do that next week.
Yeah, but this should be a great one. These are two teams loaded for bear. Both have their quarterbacks coming back. Both have stacked rosters, good recruiting classes, and all that. Saturday, August 30th has some good games. This might be the most anticipated one for me to watch would be Clemson and LSU. I mean, I hope they keep playing games like this every year. LSU, not afraid to do this. Clemson, not afraid to do this. Clemson played Georgia 2 years in a row. LSU, I mean, they just keep doing it. It's great. So yeah, rack it up, keep going. I'm excited about that.
And this isn't in Las Vegas or in Hollywood or something like that. This is in Clemson, South Carolina. So that's a cool part of that as well. So yeah, Clemson, LSU to start the season off with. Then it is back at home, first 2 weeks at home, as on September the 6th, they will face off with Troy. So looking at 1-1 or 2-0 there, most likely. I think that LSU game's a bit of a toss-up at the moment. But then after Troy, and what is likely your first or second win, then you will travel to Georgia Tech to open ACC play in week 3 there. Saturday, September the 13th will be the date of that game in Atlanta. So this is a game that follows the first time that they had not played each other since 1982 because of the growth of the conferences. So they're getting back to it, and Georgia Tech will open up conference play. I'll stop once I get to a bye week, which is after this following game. September the 20th, 4 games in a row. This one also ACC contest. It'll be Syracuse there in Clemson, South Carolina. So first 3 games are at home, but first 3 games also feature LSU, Georgia Tech, LSU at Georgia Tech, and then Syracuse, who was a pretty good story a year ago. So, first visit for Fran Brown as leader of the Orangemen to go down to Clemson, South Carolina.
And that's a pretty good schedule.
It is.
I hope that we don't get away, and I don't think we will because the Michigans, Ohio State last year had a little bit of a week, but Texas and Oklahoma, they're playing good people. They're going to play good people. So I hope we don't get away from these great non-conference games. Georgia Tech, I love their coach, Brent Key. That's a tough game. That's on the road. That is a little dicey. Clemson, of course, good, but that's good that they're going to reconnect again in week number 3.
And look, looking at, they've got, it's a tough schedule, but they get all of the tough games or the rivalry games except for 1 at home. Or 2, I guess, at the end of the year with South Carolina. We'll talk about that. But this first little pod here, 3-1, they're fine. 2-2, then Dabo's got to talk. He's going to have to be like, well, no, we're not going to get more transfers or no this. He's going to be, what's his name? Tucker from Spartanburg or whatever his name was is gonna be calling up again. But if they're 3-1 and their losses to LSU, I don't think anybody's going to care. But Georgia Tech and Syracuse are teams that can put a charge in you for sure. And that could be interesting. Georgia Tech in Atlanta would scare me if I'm anybody. They look like they're on a rise right now, and Haynes King is back, and he's just a gamer, man.
He needs to be healthy, though. That's the thing. I want to see him actually be able to throw the football with regularity and not have to basically be a glorified running back half the time, which he was, especially there late in the year. But, yeah, he's a good player, and Georgia Tech ought to be pretty good. So they will finally get a break, after that first 4-game stretch. And then return on October the 4th, taking on Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels in Chapel Hill. So you have a couple weeks to prepare for that game, and then it'll be Dabo versus Belichick, just like we all predicted years ago that we would get a matchup like that. So that'll be interesting from just a kind of PR standpoint. Then the following week, they are on the road again at Boston College. Chestnut Hill taking on the Eagles on Saturday, October the 11th. They've won 12 straight against Boston College, and they're 5-0 in the last 5 trips to Chestnut Hill. So Bill O'Brien versus Dabo Swinney here. So back-to-back games against former NFL head coaches turned ACC head coaches. Then October the 18th, it'll be SMU in a rematch of last year's ACC championship game. First time they'd ever played each other. And, of course, Clemson with the big walk-off as they won the game and got into the playoff. Of course, SMU lost the game and got into the playoff, but now a rematch between those two in a thriller last year, and then their second bye week. So that stretch of at North Carolina, at Boston College, and then SMU before they get another break. But some pretty interesting coaching matchups and an interesting rematch from a year ago.
Am I allowed to bring up? No, I'll wait. And look at the overall ACC schedule they have. That's Bill Belichick. They get a bye week, so at least they'll know and have something on film of North Carolina when they get to that point of their schedule.
So 4 a break, 3 a break, and then a final 5-game stretch to close the season, all in the month of November. They will play host to Duke. Then it is hosting Florida State, and I should make mention about Clemson. All the way up to this point, it's been all Saturday games, but that does change. After Duke and then Florida State, both of those games at home, it is back on the road to take on the Louisville Cardinals, and that will be a Friday night game. So even Clemson has to play a Friday night game, and it will be against Louisville on November the 14th. So that's the only non-Saturday game of the schedule. They come back the following week, and They have this non-conference matchup with Furman. That is very SEC of them to have that game so late in the schedule.
Dress for the job you want, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, yep, that's basically just getting your schedule ready for perhaps the future. But they will take on Furman on November the 22nd at home, of course. And then it is the finale on the road at South Carolina, another non-con game. So they actually close ACC play on November 14th. And then they close the year with 2 non-ACC games because it's Furman, and then it is a trip to Williams-Brice Stadium to face off with their hated rivals, the South Carolina Gamecocks, there in Columbia. And obviously that's a pretty heated rivalry. And so they're looking to make it 6 straight in Columbia against South Carolina. So that's a pretty good little streak there to go on the road and beat your rival that many times in a row. So, yeah, there you go. That's how it will close out on November the 29th with South Carolina. So, in terms of the teams they do not play, I mentioned Florida State, so this is already wrong, but they don't play Miami. They don't play NC State. They don't play Wake Forest. And off the top of my head, I don't know who else would be a big matchup maybe that they're not playing.
They don't play Pitt.
Okay, yeah, Pitt. But they get everybody else, right? They get pretty much everybody else. That's the who's who of the ACC. So, there you go. There's Clemson's schedule. Pretty even in terms of 4-5-4. So you're not having these kind of crazy, like 2 games and then your first bye week or something like that. Sexy non-con, man. LSU and South Carolina. That's pretty cool. Georgia Tech will be a fun road trip to Atlanta. Chapel Hill would be a fun road trip to see them play. Belichick go up to Boston. I go out to Louisville. I think it's a pretty fun schedule, a pretty competitive schedule. And that's what Dabo and company have in front of them with Cade Klubnik obviously being the big face of the franchise that's returning at quarterback.
And of course, SMU coming off what they did. And then if we could ever get the Seminoles
we'll see.
Straightened out.
I do think this, though. If you look, they've got 3 home games in a row, SMU, then a bye, Duke, and Florida State. Those are 3 tough games, though. SMU is going to be really good. Duke has been good consistently, and they just brought in Darian Mensah. And then you've got a rivalry game. And look, now I don't know. I have no idea what Florida State's going to be. I think they're going to be better, but that's not hard to do. If they're 3-9, guess what? They were better. But that's still a rivalry game, and you never know what's going to happen to those things. They've dominated the series as of late, only losing 1 of the last 8 or so. And so, but it's still a tough stretch, and it's a tough schedule. And, they appear loaded for it, but, man, you don't get they don't have a break of like a couple weeks where they can be banged up or injured and go through and not have to worry about somebody jumping up and biting them, really, because this is a tough one. Now, they do get, Syracuse at home, LSU at home, SMU, Duke, and FSU at home. But at Louisville, they lost to Louisville last year. At home, now they're going on the road on a Friday night. That's kind of a nasty thing there. And then out South Carolina, even though they got that streak on, South Carolina is expected to be better than they've been in a very long time.
Well, you open and close with 2 teams that absolutely will be ranked high. Absolutely. South Carolina may be ranked preseason poll higher than they've been in forever. And I don't know I don't know if they're a top 10 ranked team, but with Sellers and all that coming back, that's going to be, and then they just need Florida State to be good. You're looking at a schedule that you could lose a couple of those and still be very much in play in the college football playoff because of who you're going to play.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough schedule. I mean, they do miss Miami, so there is one, I guess, check for them in terms of it not being as brutal as it could possibly be or as tough as it could possibly be on paper. But beyond that, they pretty much have lined up as the best I can tell, one of the better schedules, tougher schedules on paper that they've had in quite some time. So, yeah, there's the Clemson schedule. Fun bookmarks. LSU to open the season ought to be a hell of a game. And then they and South Carolina both could very well be in CFP contention the final week of the season. But a lot can happen in between, obviously. But, yeah, looking forward to seeing how Cade Klubnik follows up what was a pretty sensational year last year and definitely answered a lot of questions from doubters. So excited to see how he can build off that. And, yeah, there you go. There's Clemson's schedule.
They're not going to have to travel to the West Coast, are they? No Cal, no Stanford.
No Cal, no Stanford.
Yeah. So
they don't have to go to the state of Virginia either. So
Okay. All right. With Virginia and Virginia Tech. You're right. Craig mentioned who they didn't get. All right. When we come back, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marco's Pizza. Go online, and you got a lot of different specials, including what they have right now when it comes to the big meal. For example, Marco's More Menu. Spend $7.99 or more, and add-on items start at $5 each. You go online, use More Menu, order now online, or even if you want to call them and pick it up too, you can do that. The lunch special, any Pizzoli and 20-ounce bottle of Pepsi for $7.99. The code word is lunch. Triple pepperoni magnifico, limited time only. Marco's Pizza has the triple pepperoni magnifica. It is absolutely loaded, as you can imagine, with pepperoni slices on top. You can order that now. They've got desserts and much more. Marco's Pizza, Bob Mock, with 5 locations in the Waco area, in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, Hewitt, and Robinson. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports. Go ahead and just get into it. As we got a few things off the radar to hit up, not necessarily college sports related, but very much in on our radar, and now on yours as well, bringing some stories that we might not otherwise talk about. And this was on our radar earlier as we did talk a little about Brett Yormark, and I just happened to see this, so I'm going to pass it along here rather than get to the NFL and the MLB right away and just make mention of this comment from him. And he had others, like the criticism of the court by some people, the design of the court in Kansas City. I don't know how much you guys have watched that or paid attention to that. He talked about that. He talked about Friday night football games. He talked about a few other things. But the one thing that did jump out to me was that he says, and I think he's probably said this before, but just this time of year saying it's just a bit more meaningful, that he's in favor of expansion to 76 when it comes to the NCAA tournament, that he thinks that's the right numbers. I think the economics candidly have to work. CBS and TNT have a marquee asset with the tournament. I know they know that, but in order for us to expand, they need to come to the table and provide the right economics. So that was just one of the quotes coming out of him today, and there were others as well. But 76. Are you guys cool with 76 in the NCAA tournament? No.
I'm not cool with 68.
Yeah, it sounds like the TV networks aren't ready for it either.
Yeah.
Because they're not even putting up the money for it just yet.
Yeah, so they can push it and push it and push it. They have something right now that all of the fans like. I mean, like, you've created the perfect dish. You've got it. It's fine. Like, you actually, maybe there's a little too much cheese on it right now with the playing games. But 64, 68, that works fine enough, and they don't have to change it. But I mean, to me, it'd be like going to your favorite restaurant and you've ordered the same thing all these years. You know it's perfect every time. Like, guess what? We're going to add a new ingredient to it. And you're like, no. It's absolutely perfect. Make it how you used to. Don't change it. It's new Coke. That's what they're trying to be.
Yeah, trying to get more money. But as he said in that comment, well, the networks have to have the money and blah, blah, blah. So it all comes back to that ultimately. Do they expand? Do they stay? The answer is, where's the money? And that will determine whether they make it an 80-team tournament or whether it sticks at 68 or whatever they end up doing. But I just wanted to pass that along that your Mark was talking, and that's one of the things that he had to say today in favor of 76. But elsewhere, NFL free agency is fully underway, and the Cowboys have made a couple of moves. We haven't been able to talk about them much in terms of some of the trades that were going on, and their division rivals were getting active. But now the Cowboys are starting to make some moves themselves. And the most notable move today was the re-signing of a special teams player, Cavante Turpin, returning to the Cowboys. He was slated to be a restricted free agent, but now he is got a 3-year deal worth up to $18 million, according to early reports that would make him the highest special teams or highest paid special teams player in NFL history. Not just like in the league right now, but in NFL history. So the Cowboys and Cavante Turpin, that is now a done deal. 3 years for the special teams standout. Cowboys also agreeing to terms on a 1-year deal with the Saints' Peyton Thomas, defensive end. Just a 1-year deal, as I mentioned. He's a former first-rounder back in 2021, but obviously it's not been a first-round type of career for him thus far. That's why you're signing a 1-year deal just 3 years later from being a first-round draft pick, but a guy that you feel like has some upside. He's only 26. He's from Houston, so he's a Texas guy. If you believe in that sort of thing, coming back home can improve your game. But, yeah, there's the latest pickups for the Cowboys, re-signing Cavante Turpin and then grabbing Peyton Turner from free agency.
Hey, what was the deal for Solomon Thomas?
2 years.
Okay.
Whatever. I mean, it's all everything is short term. They've not paid over $6 million a year for an outside free agent since 2015.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to now. It is what it is. They're going to be underwhelming in free agency. I saw Matt Owen on Twitter today say there are 3 ways to acquire talent in the NFL. The draft, which the Cowboys are pretty good at. Trades, which they are awful at. I mean, just straight up and down. After the Herschel Walker
Amari
trade.
Cooper, the last good one?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the only good one that they've done without Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they're just awful at it. And then free agency, which they barely participate in. And so that's why you're not getting the best. Now, there are other teams that are horrible at drafting and okay at free agency and okay at trades, and some that just do everything in free agency and can't draft. The ones that are good are the ones who use everything, like the Eagles, like the Commanders are doing right now, to make runs when you have the right people in place. So, anywho, the Cowboys' moves are underwhelming. Javonte Williams, fine, like whatever. all these guys are essentially backups. I do like bringing back Kevontae Turpin. Hopefully he can take a step as a wide receiver and they give Dak another playmaker. But I do like bringing him back because he's a fun player.
Yeah, and you mentioned Solomon Thomas. That was earlier in the day as well, another guy originally from Texas. So gets to come back home and play in the Lone Star State. And you'll see if that juices him up any further and ups his game at all. But, yeah, that trio of signees, what the Cowboys have gotten done today. Meanwhile, some other things going on in the NFL today. Daniel Jones has a new team after years with the Giants just seemingly just clinging on somehow, some way to his job there in New York. Finally, obviously, moved away from that this past year, but he is on the move again after going to Minnesota. He is now headed to the Indianapolis Colts, so he will be battling out with the young quarterback there and Anthony Richardson. So Daniel Jones, after a day yesterday where it seemed like there was a lot of big name kind of things flying around, it's been a little bit quieter today. So he is one of the more notable moves. So he will battle it out with Anthony Richardson. Also, Jonathan Allen, formerly of the Washington Commanders. He is signed with the Minnesota Vikings as they made some other moves as well. They grabbed Javon Hargrave as well from the 49ers to beef up that defensive line. And then you've got Christian Fulton of the Chiefs signing, Christian Fulton of the Chargers signing with the Chiefs. And those are kind of some of the bigger moves that have been made today. C.J. Gardner-Johnson traded from the Texans, traded from the Eagles to the Texans for offensive lineman Kenyon Green. So those are a few of the moves that were made. Anything jump out to you?
That Kenyon Green move does a little bit, not because he's been successful. In fact, he's not been. I'm wondering if the Eagles think they can do that, like what they did with Mekhi Becton with Kenyon Green. Yeah, that one's surprising to me. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, nice pickup. The Texans, I don't know who's going to be completely on their offensive line right now because they just shipped off Laramie Tunsil and they've done some other things. But I do like, look, they've lost some players, which you do after a Super Bowl, after you go big into something. The Texans, I'm very curious about. I like what they've done so far, but they've got to figure out that offensive line before anything else.
We'll be able to get John McClain's thoughts on that here in about 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, we will. We will get that. What did you think of the Commanders' pickup yesterday?
Love it. For them, look, you're going for it. Laramie Tunsil was the only good offensive lineman for the Texans last year. They have him on a rookie contract right now. You'll see I talk about this in the top 5. The Commanders and 49ers are in opposite positions right now. The 49ers had the best bargain at quarterback maybe in the history of the NFL. Mr. Irrelevant got them to a Super Bowl. Well, now they're going to have to pay him like an NFL starting quarterback and not Mr. Irrelevant. So Deebo Samuel's got to go. And some of the other guys like Dre Greenlaw, Travarius Ward, Kyle Juszczyk, like the heart and soul of this team for the last 3 years are clearing out. The Commanders, on the other hand, have Jaden Daniels, who obviously makes more money than Brock Purdy because he was the second pick of the draft, but he's still in his rookie contract, which means they have a lot of flexibility. So you can go get Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil and make some moves to improve yourself in spaces where you think you can get better. And so they're going for it right now. And why not? They were in the NFC Championship game last year. If they just sat back and were like, oh, there's no way that we can get better. Yeah, there is. You got smoked by the Eagles. So kind of do things like the Eagles do and go for it when you got the chance.
Yep. So there's a few of the NFL notes. Another one just coming down. Not a huge deal at all, but Jacoby Brissett, he did start for New England last year. He is signing with the Arizona Cardinals, so he'll be back with his former OC from his Cleveland days there. That's just not a big note by any means, but something that just happened to come down as well. And anything else in this last hour? Justin Reed of the Chiefs signing with the Saints. So a big member of that Chiefs defense getting a 3-year deal with New Orleans as they continue to, everybody in the league, tinker with their rosters and try to make some splashes in free agency. So there's a few of the items that have been going on so far. A couple of other notes outside the game of football. Garrett Cole, New York Yankees right-hander, will undergo Tommy John surgery and miss the entire 2025 season. This news came out yesterday, but it's the exact type of story that we do in this segment. So They made the decision to have surgery, miss this entire year and at least part of 2026 after getting a second opinion from another doctor on Monday. He had the procedure today in Los Angeles, and they will have updates that will follow in the months to come. But he started a couple games this spring, gave up 7 runs in 6 innings of action. And then on Thursday, gave up 6 runs on 5 hits, 2 home runs in 2 2/3 innings to the Twins. And during that, he said he felt an alarming amount of pain from that performance into Friday morning. He went and told the team. They did imaging tests, and they saw a torn ulnar collateral ligament. So the 34-year-old has been here before, and he'll now be back in on the injury list, and this time for quite a while, as Tommy John will wipe him out. And I know Paul, as a Red Sox fan, really hates that.
I mean, I don't want anybody to have Tommy John surgery. That sucks. But it's a huge blow for the Yankees. Now they did sign Max Fried in free agency, so maybe that helps this a little bit. But Garrett Cole had elbow problems at the beginning of last year, and then they kind of got by with it. This is his age 34 year. He's going to be 35 next year. So, they're not going to see him until June of next year reasonably. So that's a tough one for the Yankees, especially trying to defend the AL crown right before the season starts. They still have a really good roster, but, man, without your number one starter, and Max Fried is not a number one starter. He's not the frontline guy. But, in a rotation that has guys like Garrett Cole in it, can be very effective. But the Yankees, they're going to have to do something to try and replace him, and that's really hard to do.
I don't know if you just replace Garrett
I don't
Cole.
know if you can. Yeah, he's one of the best in the league.
Yeah, so elsewhere, final note from the Off the Radar today is Tiger Woods announced that he has had surgery for a ruptured left Achilles, underwent surgery today after rupturing left Achilles tendon, quote, ramping up and training and practice at home. He said on Twitter, 49-year-old was undergoing a minimally invasive Achilles tendon repair. So the surgery went smoothly, according to the doctor, and they expect that he will make a full recovery. He's back home in Florida and focusing on rehab, and there is no timeline for return, which, I didn't expect that there would be, but just more if you didn't already kind of feel like this was heading towards the conclusion, another injury, another surgery for Tiger Woods, who will be out for the foreseeable future, and if you guys weren't Tiger Woods fans, I probably wouldn't bring this up at all, but seeing as you are, I figured that I would, and it's off the radar, so here's a little golf for you.
Stop. Don't put it.
Each day as a Tiger fan is harder than the last.
Yeah. This one here doesn't – it's not that he doesn't bother me because you hate it, but this one here doesn't affect me as much as when he had the 2008 U.S. Open and beat Rocco Mediate on one leg, basically. Or, obviously the car wreck that just really did put him at a horrible level and has not really been able to compete after that. He's had other injuries. He's had knee injuries. But this one here doesn't affect me as much because he's just not competitive. He even admitted, I'm not even practicing to compete. I hate it for him, but it just doesn't damn it, like that thing to me because he's just not playing much enough and he's not playing well anyway.
Yeah, he's been pretty much hurt for the last few years. All the headlines that I've read about him, very little actual golf. So dealing with another injury and another surgery. And, I think you probably speak for most fans of hey, if he gets healthy and does anything substantial again, that's great. If not, thanks for the memories. But, it's been just kind of a derailing of the career and just cannot stay healthy. So at his age, not going to get any better at staying healthy at this point. So that's just kind of what it is. But there you go. There's a few things off the radar.
All right, Craig, thank you very much. By the way, a couple of teams that are in the NCAA tournament, Ben McCollum at Drake and also Chris Crutchfield at the University of Omaha, one of the Cinderella stories. Both of them will be on the show with us in the next couple of days as we have teams that make the NCAA tournament. Earlier again, Cincinnati beat Oklahoma State, and Colorado with it's an upset, 69-67 over TCU. Arizona State, K-State will tip off in just about an hour or so, and then UCF and Utah in the nightcap. All right, when we come back, the 5 o'clock hour, we're not done. We have a lot to get to, and we will. We appreciate your time. If you have not hit the like and subscribe button yet, please do. And if you have either one, please spread the word to those of you that watch us consistently, or maybe you just picked us up recently. Please spread the word. Coming up, Kendall Cout on the Big 12 men's basketball tournament as he breaks down his thoughts about each of the teams. And that's next. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. And the specials they have for this week, fresh salmon fillets. These are delicious at $12.25 a pound. Also, they have the easy peel shrimp. That's $4.99 a pound. And do a sausage. When you're going to have a crawfish boil, yes, they have the 30-pound sacks of crawfish, live crawfish, 30-pound sacks, ordered by Thursday at noon, and you could pick up anytime after, 4 o'clock on Friday or when they're open on Saturday. So they have all of what you want. Smoke ridge links, chicken wings, boneless pork loins, select ribeye, and choice ribeye steaks. If you want to have any kind of a crawfish boil, they have the potatoes, the corn, the shrimp, the crawfish, live crawfish, 30-pound sacks, ordered by Thursday at noon. Pick them up anytime Friday after 4. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McClain County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
365 Sports as we continue now into the 5 o'clock hour. Around the corner, John McClain, the Hall of Fame columnist, who will have his opinions on that Laramie Tunsil trade to Washington and also what the Texans have been doing. We'll hear from Kendall Cout here momentarily. Kendall has covered Big 12 basketball for a long, long time, and we'll get his feedback on the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. I want to go back to Craig Bohl, AFCA executive director, on what he said about what would be great about the transfer portal. You used a word that when we used it a few years ago, we were told, get off my lawn, about guardrails. They have to find a way. Do you think they ever really will? Either one of you, actually, the settlement is fixed. It goes on. Will it ever really, like, my God, there are rules for both sides?
Yeah, I think they'll get to a point where they do, because they're going to have to. They're going to have to.
I'm going to stop being a fan of the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're still talking about this another year, we need guardrails in 2026. I'm just going to be like, dude, this is the dumbest sport ever. Like, I mean, sorry, that's to be so blunt, but like, we've had this conversation in 2023. We've had this conversation in 2024. We're having this conversation in 2025. I mean, yeah, I would hope so at some point, because if we're sitting there in 26 and 27 going, man, it sure would be nice to have some guardrails, then there's no hope.
Yeah, no, you're right. They're gonna lose. I completely agree. I think realignment is something that most people can deal with. I think there's some that are like, okay, I'm kind of done with that. I think college football fans are college football fans. But if they don't have some of this, I don't know if the word's curtailed, but contained to where everybody has a chance to feel like they've won, I'm not sure they ever will, I think I'll be out.
I think you're still a little bit too much of a dreamer in terms of what you think that, like, there's going to be this evenness across the board. I think that's out the window, and I've said it before that unless you're like a Texas Tech with some billionaire oil tycoon, like, that's what's going to have to be what keeps you in the pack and running with the big dog, so to speak, is you're going to have some people like that. And if you don't, then I think you're up S Creek, basically. But this whole idea of we want it to be fair and everybody gets a shot. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, to break it to you, but that's just not the direction that we're going. We're going the complete opposite direction. We're talking about automatic buys. We're talking about 8 automatic buys for 2 conferences that have all of the biggest brands, and the only ones they don't have just got their get-out-of-jail card in 5 years. Yeah. If not right now, if they wanted to, they could leave right now, but it's just not
the ACC
set up just yet for them to do that. But it will be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, certainly by the time year 5 hits, and maybe before then. But, yeah, like that idea of like anything that we knew the way that it was is out. Like that's not coming back. That is not coming back in many ways, from the conferences themselves to just the setup of the national championship. Like, just a few years ago, we were bitching about this BCS. We're in a 12-team playoff now, guys, and that's now what everybody's complaining about. So, yeah, things have changed, and they've changed quickly, and they're not going to change back, unfortunately. But I do think that everybody can be in agreement of whether they love it or don't, the current setup. I just want people to know what they can do and what's allowable and what's not. Like, just something to everybody's playing in the same pen. And that's about where the similarities live and die. Is you're all playing the same sport, so to speak. But if you do play by a different set of rules, then you go into a different pen, and you're in a different corral. But, yeah, I don't think the days of everybody being happy and it all being kumbaya, I mean, that's all dead in the water.
All right.
Do we have Kendall, Andrew? Okay.
All right, we do? All right, Kendall Cout. Craig, thank you for your feedback. Kendall Cout covers men's basketball, not as much as he used to, but he covers it. He follows it. He put something up in the forums the other day that was about certain years following the game. Good to see you, my friend. Craig and Paul with me as well. So they've already played a couple of games. Colorado just knocked out TCU, and Oklahoma State was buried by Cincinnati. Who would you say, or is there a dark horse entering the games tonight into the next 2 days, into the weekend of the Big 12?
Always good to be on with you, Smokey, Craig, and Paul. I don't know that anybody today, Smokey, sticks out as a dark horse. Maybe if you wanted to make an argument, and why the heck not? We'll make an argument. We got video on 365 radio now. The haters said it would never happen, and here we are with a great show on radio. So I believe y'all have done it. I'm excited. I think maybe K-State could make a run. Coleman Hawkins has been a little bit banged up. If he can be a little bit healthier than he was, the Wildcats in January had a run where they were a top 10 team by a lot of advanced metrics in that month. They're probably the team that could be most likely to do that. Cincinnati shot really poorly all season. Maybe they can get hot from the field. But I think there is a pretty big gap between the top 8 teams in the Big 12. And then when you go to 9 to 16, you start thinking these teams don't really have a shot. This league probably didn't need to have 16 teams all make its conference tournament.
Kendall, Houston is a juggernaut. Iowa State, when healthy, can be a juggernaut. Arizona has been very good in the conference, and Tech has been very good. Do you think that anybody like Kansas, they've got a good big man that usually works out well in the tournament. Who else could reasonably get hot here?
I think that is the full list, Paul. I think there is a chance that KU could be a little better than they've been during the regular season. That probably starts with KU stopping to play AJ Storr, been maybe the most disappointing transfer in the history of the portal. Dominant player at Wisconsin, has seemingly lost the ability to shoot, a turnover maven in Lawrence. So I think KU might be a little bit more comfortable with the lineup that it has. Played very well on senior day against Arizona. So that's probably the extent of the reach, but I'd be pretty shocked if you go down to the Baylor, who's fighting for its life on the bubble, and those other teams. I'd be pretty surprised if anybody in that run could make a run in the dance.
Kendall, about those Baylor Bears, man, been a tough year, been a weird ride at times. How would you summarize what you've seen from your, I guess, expectations to just your surprises and where they now find themselves?
Sure. Craig, I think clearly expectations were not met this season. Whether that starts with Jeremy Roach expected to be an all Big 12 caliber player, now is not even good enough to start for the Baylor Bears. Whether that's the injuries they've had this season, Langston Love having to grind it out, Jaden Nunn's three-point shooting not being what it is against good opponents compared to how dominant he is against those sub-150 teams. So I think other than VJ Edgecombe, who's been absolutely amazing defensively and offensively, and how hard Norchad Omier has played, there really isn't anything else that's hit for the Bears this season. Rob Wright's been good, but I thought he would be good. And since the Kansas game, I think he's kind of hit a freshman wall. So everything can still turn around for Baylor in these last couple of weeks of the season. But I don't think even the biggest Baylor hater expected the Bears to be fighting for their NCAA tournament lives heading into the final week of postseason play before the NCAA tournament.
How did they get here? How did they get to that point?
Smokey, I think it was several things. Number one, I think they overestimated the ability of Jeremy Roach to come in from shooting guard to point guard, which set them back. Second, I think Baylor overlearned a little bit of a lesson from how dominant its guards were in the era of Davion Mitchell, Jared Butler, Maceo Teague, Adam Flagler, and just assumed, well, if we have dominant freshmen with them, we can plug and play guys, and that hasn't worked out. I think Baylor's biggest mistake, Smokey, has been that wing talent has not been there the last several seasons. When you really look at the three Baylor teams that have underachieved in the last 12 years, the 2013 team, led by A.J. Walton with Pierre Jackson's final season, the 2018 team that doesn't make the tournament with Manu LeConte and Joe Lual Achuil, and now this team, that one through line for all of those teams, they didn't have good 6'6" to 6'9" players that could go out and get you 10 points in a game. That 2013 team kind of screwed by Quincy Miller changing his mind on coming back. The 2018 team not having anybody besides Nooney Omat who could play the wing. And then this year's team relying upon really no wings, with maybe the exception of Jalen Celestine, who's not really quality enough coming from Cal to be a dominant scorer. So I think Baylor needs to recruit more guys in that 6'6" to 6'9" range who can go out on the perimeter, hit a shot, and score. They didn't have to have that when you had maybe the greatest guard trio in the 21st century, but you've got to have that to win when you're not going to hit on recruits like they did with Jared, Davion, and Maceo, and you can't develop guys because there's no sit-out year like the Bears had when they were able to develop Teague and Mitchell so well.
Yeah, Kendall, one day I'll have to tell you the full story about how after Quincy made that announcement, I was announcing he was at a baseball game. I was the PA announcer. I rode down in the elevator with him and Scott, and I don't know if you remember the scene from Jerry Maguire when he's getting married and, like, the video, he rubs his eyes. Like, that was the same vibe. Like, Quincy was like, I think I don't want to do this. Now, if I had told you, like, if I had, we were sitting down, crystal ball, and I was reading your palm, and I said, Kendall, the entire Bears season will revolve around the health of Josh Ojenwuna, would you have told me, like, no, you're a charlatan, give me my money back?
I would have said, Paul, you're a charlatan. I would like the money. I have just paid you back indeed. It shouldn't have come down to that. And the fact it did, I think, also speaks to Baylor. We knew coming into the season was rolling the dice a little bit by only having two playable big men. Well, they rolled the dice. They came up short there. That's going to happen sometimes, but I think the inability to get more wings and to think they could plug and play Jeremy Roach when he's not Ray J. Dennis at Duke because he hadn't been the point guard before was also a risk. Langston Love's health was a risk. I think if you simulate that season 100 times, Baylor probably doesn't have all of that collection of injuries. Jeremy Roach maybe puts it together a little bit better earlier in the season. Maybe Jaden Nunn hits a few more shots. But when you look at how bad this season has gone relative to where Baylor is as a program, this may be about the worst it could be. But that also probably speaks to Baylor was never a serious national title contender coming into the season.
Kendall, I'm sure you've seen on the boards the talk about the one and dones, and we need to go back to the championship team. Like, that championship team was so unique. You can't just construct it that way. But VJ Edgecombe's awesome. Like, he's going to be another guy in the NBA. Like, where do you sit on that balancing act of having those types of stars, but also having the type of team that actually can go and win in March?
Yep, Craig, I think the one and dones are good for Baylor, and I don't think that's been the problem the last 3 seasons. The really, I think, kind of best cases you mentioned that people have made on the boards and is you're presenting that viewpoint, Craig, would be, okay, it costs quite a bit of money to bring in a VJ Edgecombe. Jacoby Walter cost quite a bit of money. Keontae was in that pre-era, but would have cost a lot of money now. Mm-hmm. Can you more evenly distribute that money and get some more talent? I don't think so, right? Imagine this Baylor team without VJ Edgecombe replaced by a 3-star guy who's going to develop. Baylor would not even be talking about going to the NIT or this new Vegas Big 12 thing. It would be talking about losing the 13-seeded game today or the 14-seeded game today. That's not the problem. I think a really talented one-and-done is still worth the money. As VJ Edgecombe showed, they can still play defense. As Cooper Flagg shows at Duke, you get a dominant guy. That can work out quite well for a program. The real issue, I think, for the Bears is how they've landed transfer players that have not hit quite so well. And then the guys they chose to rely upon were not quite so reliable this season. And that's just going to happen sometimes. I mean, Mizzou went from 0-18 to the SEC last year to potentially a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament this season. I think, unlike what some people are saying, where it's just, oh, you got to keep your guys and let them develop. If you know somebody's not the guy right now, you got to end it quickly, right? It's like if you're on a first date and somebody starts telling you crazy conspiracy theories and then asks, like, you know, they got the Capitol Grill. Smokey and I went to in Indianapolis.
Yep.
If somebody goes out there and says, hey, can you bring me a Pizza Hut pizza? You don't need to wait the rest of the lunch to find out if that's going to develop into something, or say, well, let's get a second and third lunch and see if this guy's a little less crazy. You shut it down there. And I think Baylor probably has to get a little bit more transactional. And I think culture-wise, Baylor has to decide, you know, is joy really even still the motto, or is the motto going to be something like, you know, hard work, or what's it going to be? But I think this is a great opportunity for Baylor to re-examine what its values are, what its culture will be, and come back on the other side. But I think that will definitely include still recruiting and utilizing one-and-dones.
Grant McCaslin, fight, scratch, and claw. That's been his style. But there's talent. His Toppin is fantastic, and Williams and others. But he is just a guy. Look at what he did at junior college. Look what he did with Scott as an assistant, and what he did at North Texas. Your thoughts about, did you see him as a star this quickly when you got to know him when you covered Baylor?
So, Smokey, I don't know him super well on a personal level, but I do know their video coordinator, Chris Nottingham, super well on a personal level. He's always spoken very highly of Grant. Ashley Hodge, obviously a great friend of the site, as one of the owners of Sigma 365, and also a frequent radio guest, spoke very highly of Grant McCaslin. I think there was a really good chance if Scott had left for Kentucky, he would have been the head coach. I didn't know he'd be this good this soon. I think his incredible talent is identifying guys that are underlooked at every level and going out and getting the dudes that fit his vision, whether that's in junior college, as you mentioned, winning an NCAA tournament game at UNT, which was not an easy thing, especially back then. And now this season playing so well with Texas Tech. So I think he's just a great program builder, a very smart guy. I think Scott will be around a while, but I think he's definitely probably the top of Mack Rhoades' list if Scott ever decided he wanted to step away. But I don't think that's going to happen this season. I think he's kind of rejuvenated by what's happened this year to prove people wrong and really get it going.
You're going to stir up the Tech fans.
Kendall.
Some of them already stirred up just because.
Kendall, does Houston surprise you? Like, we've talked about it. We expected them to have like a drop-off of a record. Didn't think they would be bad, but they've not. Like, it might as well. They're still playing in the AAC record-wise. They just don't lose games. It's ridiculous.
Paul, Houston has definitely been an excellent team. Their 19-1 record this season, absolutely dominant. Big 12 was down a step, but even down a step going 19-1. And frankly, Houston was closer to going 20-0 than it was to going 16-4. The challenge, though, for Houston, I think, continues to be sort of like the old Oakland Athletics under Billy Beane in the height of the Moneyball era. Is there something about the way Houston plays that just will not translate to the postseason? There is a difference between how Houston defends and looks to attack and has a little bit more talent than West Virginia. But it seemed like all those press Virginia Bob Huggins teams would be so dominant in Big 12 play. Then on one night in the tournament, whether it was Stephen F. Austin for Bob Huggins that one season or some of the other seasons, you find one ref who doesn't quite officiate so many Big 12 games that, Terrence Oglesby, Marcus Pettigrew, Kip Kissinger, who's always in Waco now, Doug Sermons. If you don't have at least one of those guys on the crew and you're Houston in a Sweet 16 game, I would get a little bit worried about if suddenly you find yourself with 5 fouls 5 minutes into the ball game. And so that's probably my worry for Houston if I'm a Cougars fan is, does the NCAA tournament get called differently? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. It's had them in an opportunity to succeed. Maybe if 2021 doesn't feature one of the best teams of all time in Baylor, the Cougars could contend for a national championship that season since they made the Final Four. But I think that's their final test is there's something about the way Houston plays in the regular season that allows complete dominance that leads to negative results when it comes to the end. I think Kelvin Sampson's a phenomenal coach, and he might adjust. That's what happens. I think they're a good team, but I would probably put them a tier below Auburn and Duke, although some people put them in that same threshold. I think, once again, Houston's probably going to get called for a few fouls it thinks are weak and cheap fouls, but I think that style lends itself to a referee opining a little bit differently than someone might in, Provo in January.
LJ Cryer had a phenomenal year. It was fantastic late Saturday night in Waco. Part of that national championship team. I hated that he ended up moving on just because I enjoyed watching him as he's the next guy, although with some of the new stars, as you mentioned, the young freshman phenoms that came in. Your thoughts about his overall career? He's been a part of 4 consecutive Big 12 championships, maybe 5 consecutive Big 12 championships.
He is an excellent player, Smokey. I've gotten into it a couple times with his mom on Twitter about LJ's time in Waco. She was not happy when I mentioned, he's not a rotation player at Baylor that first season because he wasn't, right? He was the 9th guy. Baylor played 8 guys in the tournament. That's what happened. But he had a phenomenal career. I think he was served well by going to Houston because he got the opportunity to not be angry about, any slights he felt like had happened at Baylor. Him and Scott, I think, still have a good relationship based on their embrace after the game. I think if he'd stayed in Waco, he would have had an opportunity to be a point guard that might have turned out differently. But he's one of the 15 best players in the country. People that think I'm a Houston hater would say he's even higher than that. One of the Big 12's best guys. I think I easily would have voted him as one of the top 5 guys, even if the Big 12 still listed 5 guys on the first team. An electric shooter, somebody who was always a very nice human being. I never heard anybody say he was a mean guy to any of his teammates. But you do wonder if he had stayed in Waco, how might that have turned out? Would Baylor be a much better team this year? Almost assuredly. But he'll have an opportunity to win a national championship. He got to go back home to Houston since he's from Katy, Texas. So I think LJ's very happy. I think his family's very happy. And I always appreciated the time he gave me when he was in Waco, although obviously his mom and I have gotten sideways on Twitter a couple of times.
Kendall, that's a common occurrence for you, though.
LJ Cryer's mother, Oklahoma, the state.
I'm surprised, when you drive down here from Kansas City that, they don't pull you over in Oklahoma and just trump up charges on you, I didn't that just so bad. Is there a team, that you can see, the SEC is so good and so deep. Do you see that Houston could be a team that could make a run and beat 2 of those teams? Or is the SEC so deep that it might be fait accompli when it comes to that team getting a couple teams in the Final Four?
I think it would be pretty disappointing, Paul, for the SEC to not get a couple teams. Auburn is so good, although they've lost a couple lately. Alabama maybe is at some risk. That's probably the 1 seed I would most want to play, not because they're bad, but they're going to shoot 43s. You might get a game where they miss 32 of them. But between those teams, Tennessee's defense being so good, Florida might be as talented as any of those teams. Then you have the Aggies hanging around just a tier lower, but still probably in that 3-seed range. Mizzou's a potential sleeper. And then Ole Miss, Mississippi State. So many others will make the NCAA tournament that I do think the SEC will have 2 teams playing on the final weekend of the season.
Kendall, the Big 12 last year had a really good season. You know that. And then they really just flailed when they got to the tournament. What do they have to do this year? What do they need to do to kind of reestablish themselves? Still is among the best, but they're not. They lost a little luster with the tournament. Not only if the tournament should be the over end all, but it is in football, the championship. It is in basketball with the tournament.
Smokey, I really think the only way the Big 12 can put itself in that conversation this season would honestly be to win the national championship. I think this was clearly a down year for the conference. when Baylor and KU are probably your two best programs along with Houston, and those two have clearly down years relative to the programs and the coaches they have. It really hurts your league, much like the Big 12 would say when Texas and OU weren't winning in football all the time. Well, is the league down if those two aren't winning? When KU and Baylor are down, Houston really has to carry this league. So I think if the Cougars can win the national championship, or if maybe Iowa State could shock people and get healthy, or if Texas Tech could make a real run to the national championship, that might do something. But I think ultimately, minus Houston winning the national championship, the Big 12 will probably take a lot of flack this offseason, and some of that will be deservedly so. But with so many good coaches, there's always next year, at least with those teams in basketball.
All right. Anything else, guys? Paul, Craig, Kendall, thank you. Good to see you, my friend. Kendall Cout covers Big 12 basketball, covers college basketball, does a great job of it, although pretty much retired in the sports media business. He still is a go-to when it comes to when we come to Big 12.
Okay
yeah, I kind of burped a little bit there.
Yeah.
My voice, it's a little raspy.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. Are you having like the Ashley Simpson acid reflux situation where
No.
you remember when she was on Saturday Night Live and she was lip syncing and
she blamed acid reflux for
she
her
was
doing
acid.
a little
She
jig.
she couldn't sing because she was having acid reflux. So
I remember that. I don't remember her blaming acid
that's
reflux.
what she did. I'm sure.
I guess
like,
she's had it for like the last 20 years, I guess. as well.
I do know this, is I had a couple of pretzels, and sometimes the salt in the pretzels might create a little bit of a problem. Craig, when you were talking about the Texas Tech, did you mention Cody Campbell specifically, or did you mention a billionaire?
Let's mention billionaire boosters.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Katie Rader got a little bit flummoxed, I guess. He said that, why is it everyone always mentions the one billionaire? Why is that in your head?
I mean, he's been on this show talking about how much money he gets.
Okay, let me put it this way. Like, you can't be sensitive about the money guy when you're bragging about having the money. Like, it's like the rapper in the video's like, doing that, and then be like, why are you always bringing up the money? It's like, I mean, what? So, yeah, I don't know. Like, that's been a couple times now where I don't know if it's Katie Rader both times or if it's just Red Raiders fans in general. Like, there's nothing negative about bringing up that he's a billionaire or that he's donating a lot of money. My whole point was, unless you have someone like that, like Texas Tech does, and like they've openly had multiple outlets write about their brand new facilities and they've gotten a ton of attention for it, and all that's great. But my point was, if you don't have a guy like that, or you don't have some like massive like 50,000, graduates every year alumni base, then you're going to be pretty up S Creek in this new era. And the idea that you're not going to be, because you were talking about it being like, well, why can't we have it like the good old days? And my whole thing on my rant was, the good old days are over. And unless you're Ohio State and Texas, who have 50,000, or have whatever graduating classes and all the money, then you're going to have to be like, you have to hope that you're Texas Tech and you have like a major or major numerous donors. And so that's not a knock. That's good for them. Like,
I didn't think you said Cody Campbell. I know you didn't. Now, have we before? Yes, we had him on the show.
Well, you know what? Now you have me doubt myself. But even if I did, what's the difference?
Yeah.
But the day that we end up having to mention all of the donors and billionaires like we do agents when it comes to contract signings.
But please tell me, he's the new T-Boone.
Yeah.
So, like, when
he's rallied the other ones to the cause, too. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, he's the new T-Boone Pickens in so many ways that he's an identifiable guy who's a big-time alum who's throwing out money. And how many articles has he attached himself to in the last year? Or has he been attached to? How many ESPN articles have brought up Cody Campbell says that the Matador Club. So, like, he's put himself out there, and I don't even know why I'm defending myself because I have nothing to defend.
I didn't think you mentioned his name. I thought you said billionaires, and you're right about that. But Katie Rader says that you're kind of like that Cody Campbell is in your head, or that's in your head.
Oh
Never have I. No, I'm just
okay.
I'm just letting you know. I was going after, not going after Katie. You and I went back. I just don't understand. My God, you're getting attention about the fact you have people who can help you stay ahead of the Joneses at the high level, with the high level. Not that you're, oh my God, like Jamie Pollard when he yesterday was worried about the fact that Arizona State got $51 million to help even out their debt.
Tell you what, who's another big-time donor in the Big 12 that we can point to now?
Drayton McClain.
No, really, though.
Yeah.
Like, is he even around in that capacity?
No, yeah, he is. the Fudge family, and I say that not because of GXG, but they are. It's a pretty good question.
Yeah.
I mean, like he's the most outward. Like, and part of the reason he's emboldened to, he's got a very.
No, I'm just asking, who can I pivot to? Who's the big Arizona alum that you want me to talk about instead when we cite that type of thing?
Arizona State doesn't have one because they're taking their $51 million from the university fund. Right. So,
anyways, this has gone down too far of a path. But the whole point is that unless you have a big money donor, like the former T. Boone Pickens, or you are Ohio State and you have a bunch of people, then you're going to be in a pretty tough position, I think, moving forward. That was the entire point. But
all right, when we come back, Hall of Fame columnist John McClain on the first couple of days of the NFL and free agency. I know he wants to discuss with the Texans the trade with Washington, with Laramie Tunsil for a bunch of picks and much more. And this is 365 Sports.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. Cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy. Last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing his time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
All right, we're now joined by the Hall of Famer himself, John McClain. And John, a couple of days into the NFL free agency, of course, some trades, and I want to get your feedback about the Texans sending off a Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl tackle to Washington for draft picks.
Laramie Tunsil is one of the top pass protectors in the league. He's an average run blocker, and he led the NFL with 19 penalties. I think 13 or 14 were false starts. And Tunsil, since the Texans traded for him, Bill O'Brien, traded for him from Miami in 2019. He solidified that position, but at 2 times in negotiations for extensions, he's come out of his highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. Now he's not. His contract expires after the 2026 season. He's big 31 next season. He wants a new deal. Now, the Texans could have hung on to him for 1 or 2 years, but I think that they thought they could better get a deal now for draft choices because they weren't going to give him another extension because they're about to give, let's see, sometime after free agency, they'll make Darryl Stingley Jr. highest paid corner in the league. And after next season, they'll probably sign C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. to extension. So there was no room financially, or they weren't willing to do it, or Laramie Tunsil for a third time.
John, what is the plan along the line of, because Kenyon Green was a mess. Didn't work out. The Eagles are going to try to do the same thing with him that they did with Mekhi Becton, who's now I saw off to the Saints and with Kellen Moore this year. But what is the plan? I know Juice Scruggs probably steps in at one guard position. Now they need a new left tackle. Is that addressed in the draft? Do they make another trade? What do they do?
Well, first of all, Kenyon Green would have been cut, and they got a safety who intercepted 6 passes last year and won a Super Bowl. And with Jalen Petrie playing as the nickel corner, they had Kalen Bullock last year, third-round pick, who had 6 interceptions and was really good. They knew their rookie corner, Kamari Laster, was going to be good opposite Stingley, but they didn't know Bullock would step up like he did as a rookie. Now, they always have injuries at safety. Petrie went down for the year. The year before, he was the only one that didn't get hurt. So they now have some depth. And to get it for Kenyon Green, who would have been cut, is amazing. And they're trying to get picks. When you see teams trying to get picks, it tells you they know they're going to have a quarterback in another year who's going to make an unbelievable amount of money, and having draft picks instead of guys about to sign their third contract is a smarter way to go about it. They signed a guard, Laken Tomlinson, who started every game for the last 5 years. They'll put him at one guard position, and Juice Scruggs probably going to play right guard. Now, I'm sorry, they'll put Tomlinson at right guard. They should put Titus Howard at left guard, draft a tackle in the first round, because where they're picking 25th overall, it seems to be good value. If they can't get what they want, they can take a defensive tackle. But they're loading up front on both sides of the ball. They're cutting their right guard, Shaq Mason, who was awful, gave up 10.5 sacks. And so I think they'll use that first pick on an offensive tackle, and there are several who could be available there. And they got the draft picks if they wanted to trade up a little bit. Say Kelvin Banks Jr. from UT was available at 20. Maybe they want to move up 5 spots and get him.
John, what's the biggest move that stood out to you so far? I know there's others we'll get into, but just like what's the one that's at the top of the list for you in terms of interest?
You talking about the NFL?
Yes, sir.
I think first was Joe Thuney getting traded from the Chiefs to Chicago when a team was decimated up front in the Super Bowl. Instead of getting rid of the best one, but they did, and they don't make a lot of bad moves. When they do, Mahomes covers it up. And the other one shouldn't be a surprise, but Geno Smith going from Seattle to the Raiders. Pete Carroll loved him. When Pete Carroll got rid of Russell Wilson to go with Geno Smith, we all thought he was crazy. Geno threw 30 touchdown passes and had a rating of over 100. Last year, he had career highs in attempts and completions and yards and second on rating, but he threw 15 interceptions. And he was like C.J. Stroud. Ball snapped, you're under pressure. You're on the run. I think I saw 14 of his 15 interceptions were thrown under pressure. And so the Raiders need to work on their offensive line, and they picked 6. And then Sam Darnold going to Seattle. Everybody had it figured out when Pete Carroll got Geno Smith. And the next one now seems to be Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. If I'm Aaron Rodgers and I've made over $300 million, why am I negotiating? Why don't I just say to the Steelers, look, I'll take the minimum Give me $1 million. I want to play for a team that doesn't have a losing record and competes for the playoffs and the division title and the Super Bowl. Why in the world would he go to the Giants, who are terrible, and in all likelihood they have a new coach and GM in 2026, which means he'd be out on the street again at 42.
Moving sucks, John. I mean, you got to get boxes and call your buddies. It's a pain.
I don't think.
I'm glad you brought that up, Paul, because I think he's building a house up there.
Yeah,
and he could stay in his house while he goes to Giants Stadium, the Giants facilities next to the stadium. And but that's when you got all that money he does. That's not a good reason to stay because you want to sleep in your own bed.
Yeah, John, the 49ers are doing a soft reboot or a hard reboot?
Boy, they've gotten rid of so many players. It looks like a hard reboot. They still have some older players on their roster. They're going to pay Brock Purdy probably $40, $50 million a year. But man, oh man, they spent a fortune. And I think I saw today 11 starters are gone from their Super Bowl team in 23. And I guess it's not a total rebuild, but it's close to a rebuild. Next year, there's no pressure. Nobody's going to pick them, and maybe they'll be pretty good again.
John, I know that Josh Allen got a lot of the news when it came to the Buffalo Bills re-signing some guys, but how about that old Terrell Bernard kid, huh?
Yeah, I hope Terrell spends some of that money. He's the 4th or 5th highest paid inside linebacker. He gives his alma mater some of that money, establishes a scholarship in his name. I heard an interview with him today on the NFL radio, and listening to him talk, and you guys know this because you covered him, and the guys on NFL radio, I'm assuming hadn't had him before, they were just blown away with his personality, everything that came out of his mouth. And you love players like that to be rewarded. Remember when he was a rookie, he didn't get to play much. He sat around, and he brought that up. But, man, he worked hard. The Bills, that is a great example. Give the money to your players who work hard, are part of the culture, and they succeed. Give it to them rather than giving it to strangers for other teams that haven't done squat for you. And Bernard is a perfect example of that.
Well, we had him on yesterday. In fact, on the Monday. It was on Monday's show. And yesterday was Monday. And he was fantastic. And just the personality and everything he brings to the table. What is the biggest name that has not yet been signed? I'm talking about free agent. I'm sorry, free agent.
Well, I would say Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
One of those, because it's a domino. I'm guessing, say Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, Wilson would go to New York. If Rodgers is dumb enough to go to the Giants, Russell Wilson would go back to the Steelers. They'd have to say, "Oh, Russell, we loved you all along." And he knows, he's a smart guy. If he ends up with the Giants, that's 4 teams in 4 years with Russell Wilson. His life has become more valuable than him. But he's still trying to play, make a little money. He's made a fortune, and I like the guy. I like him a lot more than Aaron Rodgers, but Rodgers is more fun to watch, especially when he plays bad.
Yeah, John, Cooper Kupp's about to get released. I guess tomorrow is the official start of the league year or whatever. But if you're a team and needed a wide receiver, would you take a flyer on Cooper Kupp, or does the Rams releasing him give you pause because of his injury history?
Well, it's because of his injury history. He's averaged missing 6 games a year for the last 3 seasons. The last great season he had was 2021, but in the playoffs last year, he was great because he was healthy. So I would give him a 1-year deal with a lot of incentive bonuses based on his availability. If you play 17 games, if we make the playoffs and you play 17 games, we'll give you $100,000. If you play 15 games, we'll give you $90,000. Give him its financial incentive to do everything he can to stay healthy.
All right, John, thank you very much. How deep can Baylor, if they get in the tournament, because, I mean, it's still kind of probably in, but how many games do you expect them to win when they get in?
I'll be honest, this is one of the most frustrating and disappointing teams that Scott Drew's at. Is wasted on Edgecombe and O'Meara, those guys. You know, it's too bad they couldn't have played with another team. And what bothers me are the continual mistakes they make. And it's frustrating watching them. You guys know, you see it every time. And so I'm thinking they can win tomorrow, and they need to win, and then probably lose after that. But I think because of Scott Drew, the tradition, and nobody will say this, but who wouldn't want to see VJ Edgecombe in the NCAA tournament? I think Drew, Edgecombe, and Baylor's history under Scott will get them into the tournament.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.
Thank you,
John
guys.
McClain, Hall of Famer, columnist with us on usually Tuesdays at 5:30. And a lot of NFL news because of the start of free agency and a lot of players, as Paul mentioned. Some teams releasing more than others. And, of course, some trades, some pretty big trades, too, in the last 2 to 5 days. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and the top 5.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric and personalize your cover, and leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
You might ask yourself what functional mushrooms are good for. Whether it's lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, shiitake, reishi, they all serve a purpose.
You have ones for neurological health, ones for sleeping and gut health, and all these different areas. They pack a powerful punch.
Functional mushrooms are, of the millions of mushrooms and fungi out there, the ones that we can actually ingest and benefit from as humans.
Like all adaptogens, they kind of adapt to what you need at the time that you need them.
We don't even really know that we're suffering. We just don't quite feel right. That's where these adaptogens come in and really start to close the gap and really start getting us closer to how we want to feel.
Functional mushrooms have definitely re-energized me and helped me face each day with a new vigor for life.
Learn ways that functional mushrooms can help you. Go to getumble.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. Sorry, I was gone yesterday. I know that you use this to make it through your week. I get it. I can be addictive. I'm like the cocaine of sports talk or the heroin of sports talk, depending if I put you up or put you down. I don't know. Either way, they're both bad for you. Top 5 NFL free agency observations. Number 5. The 49ers are in a reboot. Deebo Samuel traded. Kyle Juszczyk cut. Dre Greenlaw gone. Travarius Ward gone. Others gone. They've only signed, at this taping, one free agent who's going to be a backup tight end. They are trying to clear out space because they're about to have to give Brock Purdy a bunch of money because he is the, most underpaid quarterback in the league right now, seeing as he was Mr. Irrelevant. Well, that also means that they might trade Brandon Ayuk. They were open to that. Doubt that happens, but John Lynch did not rule it out, and the draft is coming up. This is a 49ers team that has a lot of potential, but a ton of injuries last year, starting with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. And a lot of those guys that are gone, Dre Greenlaw, Travarius Ward, all spent time injured last year. So the 49ers are clearing the deck. They've lost some other players in free agency as well and not brought them back. Clearing the deck for Brock Purdy and then kind of have to go from there. They've clearly missed their window of Brock Purdy on that sweetheart of a deal contract. Now he's going to have to play out on what is league value for a starter of his effectiveness. Now, I know there's a lot up for debate about Brock Purdy, but you still can't deny that he's a starting level NFL quarterback, and those just don't come around all of the time. Number 4, the Commanders are all in. Trades for Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil. Right now, they got Jaden Daniels on the rookie contract, like the 49ers did with Brock Purdy, and the 49ers were even better because he was the last pick in the draft and not the second, like Jaden Daniels. But they clearly have a window here with Jaden Daniels on his rookie contract. So they have some wiggle room to go and add Laramie Tunsil and give him an extension, add Deebo Samuel and give him an extension, and do things on the defense and give people extensions, move people in and out like Jonathan Allen off to the Vikings, but they're still making moves and they're being very aggressive. Why are they doing that? Because now is the time to strike. It's been a very long time. They can taste it being in the NFC Championship game last year, and they're trying to make smart moves and not waste this chance that they have, because in about 3 years, you're going to have to pay Jaden Daniels a bunch of money, a lot of it, and some of these moves will go away. So in the short term, Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel, and these others, great moves that can really help that offense and invigorate a fan base that was beaten down for so long. Josh Harris ain't messing around. Number 3, the Cowboys, unsurprisingly, tiptoe through free agency again. They've made several moves. Javonte Williams at running back, Robert Jones at guard, re-signing their own. They brought back Kevontae Turpin and Trent Sieg and, of course, Oso Odigizua. But as far as moving outside the organization, they have not done that much. Solomon Thomas, a defensive lineman, signed today as well. All these guys are rotational or backup players for the most part. Javonte Williams likely not going to be the starter there. He's the replacement for Rico Dowdle. Javonte there means Rico gone. In all very palatable deals. What's surprising is that they've cleared out a bunch of salary cap money, presumably to do 2 things. One is to re-sign Micah Parsons to a long-term deal, which God knows when that gets done. The second thing would be to go in and bring in players to compete and maybe start on the roster. There's really only a couple positions where you can see that they have desperate needs, but cornerback, where Trayvon Diggs is unlikely to start the season, is one of them. Linebacker is the most desperate need because they don't have that many on the roster at all. I mean, actual healthy linebackers on the roster. They're going to have to sign 2 or 3 in free agency before the draft or around it anyway, not to mention what they do in the draft at that position, and a legit number 2 wide receiver, whether that comes in the draft or you make a deal for somebody, but a lot of those guys are off the board now. Maybe Cooper Kupp, as he gets released, becomes interesting to the Cowboys. Who knows? but they've got to do something at those positions in particular. And there's still questions at guard, even though they did sign Jones from the Dolphins, who started every game last year, but will be in a competition with Brock Hoffman, assumably, for that right guard job, replacing the legendary Zach Martin, who retired just last week. Number 2, the Bucs are on top of it, bringing back Chris Godwin on a team-friendly deal because Godwin, Evans, and Baker Mayfield are the three amigos. They are thick as thieves. They want to run this thing together. Not only that, a brilliant move, bringing in Hassan Reddick to help their pass rush, which was not good last year. And Hassan Reddick did not like being a Jet. Did not like being a Jet is all. He's going to Tampa. That should really help their defense. He replaces the now departed Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who went to the Browns, but an upgrade, even though he was a malcontent last year, gets his contract, will play in Tampa. Todd Bowles will do a great job with him there on that defense. And number 1, Ben Johnson is loading up on the front for the Bears. 2 trades. And then signing a center. Their offensive line, now a completely new look, was a disaster for Caleb Williams in year 1. Look, they've got young wide receivers, good wide receivers, in DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. They've now got an offensive line in front of Caleb Williams that will block for him, including last year's first-round pick, or 2 years ago's first-round pick, Darnell Wright. Bringing in Joe Thuney, huge. Drew Dalman at center, huge. Making the moves they made for the offensive line, really, really good. Braxton Jones, right now the starter at left tackle. Plus, it allows them to make moves in the draft and maybe draft an Ashton Genty at 10, which would distress me, as you know, because I have the dream of him going to the Cowboys. But if you can up that running game, help out Caleb Williams in any way, shape, or form, that would be huge for Ben Johnson in year 1. And you know he loves his running backs coming from Detroit, where he's got the two-headed monster of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now he'll try to get that done again in Chicago. The Bears are not messing around. They also brought in longtime Falcons defensive tackle Grady Jarrett. They are not messing around. Bears and Commanders really trying to capitalize on their young quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, obviously a much better year last year than Caleb Williams, but Caleb Williams did not have the offensive line in front of him. Now he does. You put it on Caleb, you put it on Ben Johnson. The moves they are making are strong. Now, nobody wins this thing just in free agency, but so far, the Bears and the Commanders jump out to me as teams that are making moves, and the Bucs especially. That's going to do it for this Top 5. We will see you tomorrow. Smokey, say bye-bye.
All right, Paul. Yeah, the days of a Deion Sanders signing, flipping the complete power structure of teams that are going to win a Super Bowl with the 49ers and Cowboys, those days are pretty much over. Niners got him from Atlanta. Cowboys then stole him from San Francisco. They both won Super Bowl championships with him. All right, Craig Smoak, thank you very much. Paul Catalina, Andrew Valade, second day running the mothership. Well done. Lots smoother. There, you know, we'll get into the film don't lie thing here in a minute. But good to see Corey Dickman here as well in our studio. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to all of you that watch us on YouTube, 365 Sports, or Twitter at 365 Sports YT. Have a great day. Back again tomorrow. Thank you.